Jerry and his team and Andrea for getting everything set up early in the morning after a full day yesterday. And we're ready to get going on some exciting agenda items. The first of which is an opportunity to recognize the achievements and the activities of our farm to table group. And I'd like to turn the time to Patty Norman for recognition of these good people and the work that they're doing.
Thank you. If we can have Kimberly Loveland, Michelle Martin, and Danielle Perez either come up, or if you are online, let's see, and wave to us, please, and in order. So we have Kim Loveland, give us a wave, Michelle Martin, and Danielle Perez. Thank you, Danielle. There we go. Okay, so this is wonderful, and I have this handout here, and it's also in our backup that talks about the Apple Crunch Day that we just had as well. So the Farm to School in Utah, the primary role of the child nutrition program is in conjunction with the Farm to School efforts is to ensure students have access to nutritious meals. The Farm to School fosters connections among students, schools, and local farms. The program initiatives and events engage students in learning the core standards. So it's not just about, it really incorporates the standards within what they're doing. The Local Food for Schools Cooperative Agreement Program, this is the United States Department of Agriculture grant, and it focuses on increasing the purchase and distribution of nutritious, locally grown foods for school meal programs. The Utah State Board of Education received over $1.9 million in funding to purchase local food as part of this grant. 6 total local producers for beef and bison were set up on a statewide contract, reducing administrative burden on the LEA. Funding was allocated to 135 school districts, charter schools, and private schools to purchase local beef and bison. Reimbursement requests from schools will continue in Utah grants until April 2025. So the promotional programs, the peer learning groups, culinary training, and movement building workshops, there were 3 promotional programs which are designed to bring individuals together with similar interests in farm to school to share experiences and improve practices. The first of these is the peer learning group. And that consisted of 3 different group meetings, and they met virtually once a month. That was for the institutional food buyers, which is the school food service directors from school districts and charters, the indoor growers, which is local growers as part of indoor farming organizations, and local health departments, which is the health promotion and health educator leads at regional health departments. Then there were the culinary trainings. And this was part of Harvest the Season initiative, which aimed to offer practical experience in using locally sourced ingredients for cooking. This involves school nutrition staff from Sevier School District and Tooele School District receiving training from a national culinary chef team led by Chef Cindy at Culinary Solutions. I really wanted to be a part of it, and I did not make the cut, just so you know. So then there's also the movement building workshops, and that facilitated collaboration among farmers, ranchers, school districts, and other stakeholders through 13 regional hubs in Utah. These events included farm tours, food production tours, and community meals, fostering connections and celebrating achievements within Utah's local food programs. Then we have the Farm to School annual promotions, and these are things like, and if you haven't been to any of these, they are open invitations: the Apple Crunch, the Squash Summer Hunger, the Raising the Stakes, and Harvest of the Seasons events promote local produce and educate students in Utah schools about life cycles, nutrition, and school meals. So I don't know if we want Kim, Michelle, or Danielle to add anything to that, or if any of you have any questions.
Any comments from our folks online?
I'll add to the success of Apple Crunch this year. This has been an ongoing event for the past 5 years, I believe. We celebrated another successful year as just one of our annual promotions as part of National Farm to School Month in October. And for this year, across 41 events held statewide, there was about 120,000 Utahns that took a bite out of locally grown apples. So huge success there. We represented about 110,000 in support for Utah apple producers. And I think we had an additional 60,000 spent on local apples this year, rather, or from the previous year. So more than like a 50% increase in spending and a 61% boost in participation. So just wanted to give you all some stats to outline the success a little bit more.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We were straining to hear a little bit, but I think we got most of it. And we appreciate so much the good work that is going on throughout the state. And we have some certificates that we will get
Chair
to
Ruth, do you mind if I?
Please do.
Thank you. This is so cool. And I we have a food pantry at Sully Community College, and we know that food insecurity is something that we talk a lot about when it comes to school lunch as well. And I think the really cool part about it is this is a bunch of folks coming together to not only educate, but feed and teach. And I think that there is a new generation of students that are going to be really interested in this local farm to plate and having their own gardens at their house. I learned recently about a school out in the very, very west desert that it takes them an hour and a half to get to a grocery store. And so they've started at their school, started growing all their lunch food and doing things like that. So all of this is just so cool to me because it's a combination of a lot of things. And oftentimes during the summer, I send pictures to Member Earl of my garden. So I'm feeling like we should definitely participate in some of this because we have some growing competitions as well.
It's awesome. That is
I didn't
just great.
send her any pictures of mine. I was gone July, so.
Please do.
So when I started to run for school board, my kids were like, "Can you talk about school lunch? Like, can you, work on school lunch?" And I'm like, "Absolutely, that is my promise for you," which is the only way I got approval from my children to do this. So I'm going to happily take this back to them and say, we're working on it. But beyond that, I have toured different elementary schools in the Philippines. And in the urban schools, what they do is in this one school in particular, they had started a garden class. And in the middle of their school grounds, they had worked on a garden. And so they had eggplant, they had the greens, they had carrots, and then they have the kitchen area where they would then prepare the food. So and this was incorporated into the 4th and 5th grade curriculum. So it was targeted to that. When they went to the older grade levels, then they worked on building a structure, like a living structure from the ground up. And then that was what their final project for the end of the year. But what I love to see is that at the end of it, the kids each got a plant that they take these and they fill them up. They cut them in half, they fill them with soil, they plant the seed, they put a little string on it, and then they can have their garden that they start to grow at home. And the kids loved it, and they were so proud of this garden. And then it's even more fun when they get to harvest their hard work months later, and they prepare it and serve it for school. And so that is like learning that is beyond like the classroom. That is something that positively impacts them at home. And I think that is also relevant for us here. And culturally, our gardens used to be a huge part of our society. That's shifted away. And I came across this article once recently where it talks about in cities where we used to have corner markets, and even those are being eliminated. So kids aren't getting this access to the fresh fruits and stuff. So I do feel like there might be this exciting corner that we're turning where we're coming back to our roots. No pun intended. And starting cultivating, no pun intended, where we get to talk about the beauty of agriculture and how that is very relevant in this new generation. So thanks for all of the work on this. This is exciting.
Some of us are old enough that we were a part of the last cycle when gardening and families working together to produce a lot of the food that we ate was just a part of our lives. I grew up in a family of 7 children. I was the oldest, and Dad and Mom both were came from agrarian backgrounds and had participated in family gardens that were like an acre, huge gardens, and raspberry patches that would produce 50 gallons of raspberries, and just amazing work. Um, and I was proudly in charge of my 6 siblings in getting the garden weeded, and it was a good sized garden. Um, and I had opportunities for many years to enjoy the bounties of that wonderful garden that my dad planted every single year with the help of his 7 children. So I'm excited to see this becoming more of a reality and getting my grandchildren back in touch with the possibilities that have just kind of gone by the wayside in many of their lives because everything's at the supermarket. And we're grateful for your efforts, and we're excited and um, all of the apples and all of the beef and all of the other wonderful opportunities that we will have to partake of and enjoy the efforts of our homegrown and local farmers and providers. Thank you so much for the good work that you're doing.
Randy, can I make one comment? Just one comment. I just heard, I think you said something about bison. So is that right?
Yes. Uh-huh.
Bison burgers. What are we talking about? Do kids have that on their menu? Yeah.
Absolutely. It's part of that LFS cooperative agreement.
Oh.
Some schools had or received funding for Ute bison, which was a really special opportunity, and got to learn about the history of Ute bison and understanding where that comes from and trying it in delicious patties or even in just chubs too.
Oh, cool. Okay, thank you. I've had bison burger. That's why I was wondering out at the Antelope Island. So I was like, did I just hear that right? So, okay, thank you.
All right. Is there any public comment? No. All right. We'll move on to action item 1.3, R277325, Public Education Exit and Engagement Surveys. We're going to take a look at the incorporated documents of the exit surveys. And we do we have any background? Is Elise online? Oh, yes, she is.
Hi.
Congratulations, Deputy Nui. We're so happy to welcome you in your new role.
Thank
And
you.
would you just try talking and see if perhaps we can get a little bit more volume on what we're having come
Okay.
out of the
Can you hear me?
online participants? So why don't you just say the ABCs or whatever?
Okay. A, B, C, D, E, F, G.
Or more.
No, more.
That's the highest I got.
Keep
Okay,
talking.
great. If you can kind of lean into your mic, it is still
Okay.
kind of soft down here, and that would be just great. Do you want to give us some background? I mean, we've had this for a while, but just to bring everyone, including our public participants, up to speed, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Sure thing. So this is a result of a rule that oversees the exit and engagement surveys that are given to educators. The engagement survey is given every other year, if I'm remembering that correctly, and exit surveys are given when an individual leaves the profession here in Utah. And so this rule governs that. And as part of that rule, there are 2 actual surveys that are incorporated by reference into these rules. There is the exit survey and the engagement survey I've mentioned, and we've just been looking at those in language and tweaking those and getting those right. And so I don't believe we have any changes to the rule itself. We're looking just at the drafts of the exit and engagement surveys themselves. And staff has been working really hard on this, and they're here to answer your questions or any concerns that you have.
Does the board, do the board members have any questions or concerns regarding the engagement survey?
Randy,
No, I'm sorry. The exit survey is the first one on the list here.
I just thank you for taking the time to go back through. I just looked through it and I feel like it addresses some of the things that we brought up last month. Plus, it seemed like it cleaned it a little bit, right? So I'm kind of glad we waited and didn't just quickly move it through. I like the alignment. I like how Dixie call it right. We made sure it was completely accurate and even making sure the information coming back is accurate. I'd just like to make a motion that the committee approves R277325 public education exit and engagement surveys on first reading and forward to the board for approval. Do I need to read the surveys incorporated document exit survey on first reading and forward to the board for approval on second and final reading?
Thank you. It appears that the two motions that we have listed here are both saying the same thing. Are they not? Oh, no. Yes. Please. Great. That would be awesome.
Yeah, just briefly, we have a draft update to the exit survey, which incorporated some of the questions and concerns that you'd asked us to make sure we're in those questions. And as you mentioned, we did clean up just a few things while we were at it to make it flow a little bit more smoothly and make sure that all our information was being able to be filtered in the most accurate fashion. So that's reflective in the draft. We did that for both the exit and engagement survey, which we talked about previously. The two surveys are quite similar. And so when you shift one, you just make the other match. And so we did that with both. So today you'll be looking at approving, if you would like to, the draft of the exit survey and also the draft of the engagement survey. And then there is a rule change that's coming up for renewal in January, which we've been working on. There are a few very small changes in there just related to aligning with the fact that the climate survey is no longer required every year. So just some small language changes to align with changes in code that have happened. So those are the three items on the agenda.
All right, thank you. So the actual motion that we're working with right now is referring specifically to the engagement survey rather than the exit. And the next one will be exit. So let me repeat the motion. The committee approves R277325, public education exit and engagement surveys, the incorporated document being the engagement survey for this motion, on first reading and forward to the board for approval on second and final reading. Is there any further discussion? If not, those in favor say aye. Aye. That is unanimous. All right, we're moving on now to the second survey, which is the engagement survey, but it says just the opposite. No, it is the exit. It is the exit survey. Okay. I would be happy to entertain a motion.
Okay, I'd like to make that motion that the committee approves R277325 public education exit and engagement surveys incorporated document exit survey on first reading and forward to the board for approval on second and final reading.
Thank you. We have a motion on the floor. Is there any discussion or questions? Are there questions regarding this? If not, the motion is that the committee approves R277325 public education exit and engagement surveys incorporated document exit survey on first reading and forward to the board for approval on second and final reading. Those in favor, say aye. Aye. That's unanimous approval. The next item, 1.5, is 277325 public education exit and engagement surveys amendment and continuation. Is there any discussion or any background? This is the slight change that you mentioned just a moment ago. Are there any questions or any discussion from the board members? Let's go with a motion.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion that the board continue and approve R277325 Public Education Exit and Engagement Surveys, Draft 1 on first reading and forward to the board for continuation and approval on second and final reading.
Thank you. We have a motion that the committee continue and approve R277325 Draft 1 on first reading and forward to the board for continuation and approval on second and final reading. Any further discussion? Seeing none, those in favor say aye. Aye. That's unanimous in the affirmative. Thank you very much. Appreciate your work on this and glad to be able to move that forward. Next, we have action item 2.6, CTE course standards approval. And we have Talia Longhurst and a number of our wonderful CTE specialists who have been involved in the updating and bringing up to speed many courses that we have had the chance to review. And for the public, let me just say that CTE programs are approved annually through the consent calendar process as directed by R277911-2. CTE courses make up these approved CTE programs of study. Following the board-approved CTE course revision process, approximately 1/4 of the courses are reviewed and updated annually. And it's kind of a little bit overwhelming to look at 1/4 of them annually, because that's not just a dozen or so, as Talia can testify from her work. How many total programs do we have in the CTE arm of USB?
Well, so Talia Longhurst, Director of Career and Technical Education here at USBE. Thank you for that question. We think of programs in terms of our CTE pathways. We currently have 32 pathways. Each pathway is made up of a sequence of courses, and we have approximately 300 CTE courses in the state of Utah currently. And we're always looking for new things that fit our requirement of high skill, high wage, or in demand or emerging occupations. That's the kind of the guideline that we live by. We're looking for those new things that we need to be preparing students for and things that are sunsetting and moving away from. So
I think as I have watched the CTE program, both during the 16 years that I was on a local board in the state, and I was privileged to serve for 16 years on the board of directors for MTech at higher education level. But we had what in those days we call the MATC near our local high schools in that local board, and the program just blossomed and became such a huge resource for students to prepare themselves. And the relevance of this training, because we were keeping in touch through the very careful process that has been set up with the industry and what is growing and what is kind of falling away by the wayside because new technologies, new ways of doing things have emerged. Students were getting training that immediately allowed them to see the reality of what is possible for them in terms of being able to get certifications and trainings and further certifications that would only improve their lot in life and their earning power in terms of being able to provide for themselves and for their families. And so I'm so delighted to see this continued growth. And as we are growing at the secondary level, that's increasing the need for further extensive training following up on these CTE courses at the higher education level. And we're seeing, particularly in Utah County, MTech has just expanded with the new campus, almost completed in Payson on the far south end of the county. And the building that we took over in Provo which was originally the court building. 3 stories. We thought, oh, we'll never fill this. It's filled. And they're looking for where else can we possibly go. So this is a tremendous preparation program for very fast and efficient ways for students to receive additional training and prepare themselves to be successful. And we're looking forward to the opportunity to look at many of the courses today, the course standards. We are going to pull data
Analytics.
And not look at that one today. We will look at that in one of our next meetings. We have some industry input that would require us to rethink some of those standards before we consider them. And certainly we're living in a data-rich period of our history, and we need to be on top of what's happening. So we appreciate that important and valuable input from industry, and we will get that into the standards before we review them here. May I just turn the time over to you for a moment, Talia, to help us understand what we need to accomplish this morning?
Absolutely. Let me first begin by just introducing some of our staff members that are here today. As overwhelming as it is for all of you to review a quarter of our CT courses annually, it's also very overwhelming for staff to keep up with all of it and keep up with those changes and continue to modernize and stay up to date. So let me just go down the road, give a little wave when I call you out. Let's start with Colton Williams. Colton is one of our specialists. Jonathan Fry is our CT coordinator over programs. Brecken Haywood with work-based learning. Rachel Rao, business marketing finance. Just some brief titles. Sage Bowman, over many things. Hammers to hairspray is always what I like to say. Although you don't do hairspray anymore, we moved that one out of you. Ashley Higgs, Christina Yamada, all things computer science and digital technologies. Lola Evans, family and consumer sciences. Maren Hansen, she has the hairspray component now, but also health science and some of the things that and protective services. Yes, thanks, Maren. I always like to go back to my own personal background, which is in the health science area. I was a health science professional before I joined education. And I always say, you know, every 4 years we update courses. It's not like in health sciences, we find new bones that we never knew existed before, new muscles or new whatever. But many things change year over year, new technologies, new diseases, many things. And so we consider it to be a very important part of our job to address these standards every couple of years and to make sure we are current and up to date. And so what we're hoping we can do today is pass all of these out. We know you'll have some thoughts, some discussion points. We're here to answer those for you. I always say that I know enough to be dangerous, and that's pretty much it. So that is why our staff is here as subject matter experts, and the people who sit with the writing committees as they put these together. Not all of our staff are experts in each of these areas that they oversee, but they bring teams together of subject matter experts, industry partners, and we rely on them, our post-secondary partners as well, to help keep us aligned with both post-secondary and industry and make sure that we are teaching the correct things to our students.
Thank you, Talia. We appreciate that introduction, and we are grateful to all of you being here so early on a Friday morning. And we're grateful that we can turn to you for some answers as we progress through this. Do we just start at the top of the document? Is that a good way to start? Yep. All right. Who has the first comments or?
Could I potentially make a suggestion?
Please, that's great.
I wonder if it would be helpful. I know we have some amendment suggestions that came in early. Could we potentially pool any of the courses that you want to discuss. And if there are courses, this is how we did it last year. If there are courses that you don't want to talk about and you're ready to move forward to next month for full board approval, we could pass those on, let our folks go who don't need to stay for the entire time, and then go into depth on the courses you do want to talk about. That's just what we did last year. It's up to you guys how you'd like to proceed.
I like that. That sounds good. So, board members, would you like to let us know which courses you don't have anything to contribute to?
Yes.
I don't have listed out the ones that we do have. Do you have that? Okay, because I made a list of the ones that I don't have any recommendations in, but that's a long list, but I don't have the list that do. And so I'm a little nervous that I hope I don't miss one. Does that make sense? Because I've kind of went opposite. You do have that?
The second motion down on the spreadsheet.
Okay.
Is all the courses, and I just took data analytics and moved it up to the move to next month one motion. So
Okay.
the ones in the second motion down are the ones that we don't have red items on. So those ones would potentially could be passed if the other board members don't have any questions about any of those.
So you're saying these are the ones that we would move?
Yeah, that could move
Move on to the
forward if
board.
you don't have any questions on them.
Okay. Would you like me to start reading the list? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I wonder if this is the same as mine. It's probably pretty close. So the motion would be, now if we, okay, sorry, before I start the motion. If we do find that there is one, we could bring it back, right? I mean, just that knowledge that we would contact you, let you know, we'd have to make a motion before the board, right? But yeah, okay, just making sure. Or we'd just make the amendment in the board meeting too.
Yes.
Okay.
And there is that one motion where we talked about the acronyms.
Yeah.
That could potentially be for multiple courses.
Yes.
And so
So
if we can consider that a
yeah.
change, then I think we could pass them, but it's up to you.
I think that's a good idea. I'll make this motion, add technical change at the end of it and any technical changes, right? And then speak to the concern with the technical changes. Does that work when it's, okay.
Thinks that will be appropriate.
Does that work, Michelle? Okay, because it's not really a change in anything other than the way it's set up. Okay. So the motion would be that the committee approves the following CTE courses, including any technical change. There we go. Technical changes, and recommends they're forwarded to the full board for final approval. Electrician 2, we don't have electrician 1 on there.
I think you have a.
Oh, I have an overall motion for that one.
Wouldn't go forward because there's something in that.
So let me ask one question, technical question before I do that, because that may affect these others. If we move this forward, should I make that motion first? Because that may affect several others. Does it make any? Okay, so it's a change to, let me find it. So on our document, it's number 9, and it would have impact several of the ones that we're about ready to approve if it's approved. So we probably ought to do that first, and then would that be the right order? Okay, so let me do that. So this is under electrician 1, but it would be I would ask that it be the same throughout the whole document. And it's so if you look in column C, this is motion 9. I'm reading from electrician 1 though. Students will display workplace skills related to the essential attitudes and abilities for success in the electrician profession. But the striking is similar through the whole document. And it's just striking environmental awareness, builds rapport with peers, and fosters appropriate workplace relationships and interaction, respects differing opinions. That's the motion. I don't need a second though, right? Board member, Chair Booth, can I speak to it then?
Please do.
When I first started reading through these, and I ran across this several times, environmental awareness, the first thing that popped into my mind was like, oh, get the paint chips so the kids can't eat them. right? Lead paint chips, asbestos, are, you know what I mean? There were a variety of things. I'm thinking that's what I thought when I thought environmental awareness. And so then every time I'd read it and I go, oh, it's about relationships. But then when you go back and compare it and you look, build rapport with peers. Well, you've got teamwork, building trust and relationships, works cooperatively with others, and utilizes individual strengths of team members anyways, then you go look at the top, demonstrate skills in listening and speaking, communication. And then at the bottom, leadership builds positive relationships. Anyways, throughout those other items, this really is already built in. So my logic is, I don't know what, every time I read environmental awareness, it seemed to go somewhere else. And yet the things that were there are already articulated. So that's my rationale there.
So you're like, the environmental awareness is not about like the environment, like the
even though,
nature, right? It's about the environment of the workplace. And it does seem a little bit repetitive.
Talia, are you good with any feedback?
I see no concern. Like, make sure you express if you have concern. I see no concerns with that.
Great. So please do.
I just think also, as we're updating and we're beginning to, I don't know, even realign or refocus what our mission and vision is, like focusing on those foundational skills that are skill sets that are beyond like this environmental awareness. Because I mean, even if you go just do a general Google of like electrician workplace skills, like those get into the nitty gritty of what it means to be a competent electrician. Like the environmental is like, do you have a hot wire? Like, do you know what wire code coloring mean? Like at that level, that is what we need to really be focusing on for our students. And so I just hope that as we move forward, let's bring that excitement back into the forefront of what our standards are, and make sure that we do have that built in, but we don't have like 10 categories of environmental happiness to one core knowledge skill set. So anyway, thank you.
All right. So in repeating the motion, what in the world will I read? Or may I just say,
I think you can
have
say
a motion on the floor, and we will ask the maker of the motion to repeat it.
Sure.
As we
let me repeat it. That maybe I can repeat it this way, even that this amend all documents that have the wording. That's the easiest way, right? Andrea, you guys are good. Amend all documents that have the wording environmental awareness builds rapport with peers and fosters appropriate workplace relationships and interactions, respecting differing opinions be removed. I guess that's the cleanest, right?
All right. That sounds good. So we've got that motion before us. Any further discussion? Seeing none, those in favor say aye. Aye. And I think I heard Member Reel. Thank you. That's unanimous. And now we're ready to move on to
I'll go back up to the beginning. So now those apply to all. Okay. That the committee approves, and I'll put electrician 1 in there. So that the committee approves the following CTE courses, including any technical changes, and recommends they're forwarded to the full board for final approval. Electrician 1, electrician 2, plumbing 1, plumbing 2, video production 1, video production 2, TV broadcasting 2, 3D animation 1 and 2, 3D graphics 1 and 2, digital illustration, graphic design, capstone, accounting 1 and 2, business, finance, and marketing capstone, principles of cyber defense and ethics, APCK cyber. I don't remember what that is, but there it is. 1, networking fundamentals, APCK cyber 2, cybersecurity fundamentals, Linux fundamentals, database development, game development fundamentals 1 and 2, computer program capstone, electronics 1 and 2, dental assistant, medical forensics, biotechnology, exploring health science, medical assistant, culinary 1, ProStart 2, law enforcement, Woods 1 and 2, ASC chassis, MLR, ASE electrical electronics, basic automotive, collision repair, bicycle repair training, collision non-structural repair, collision refinishing and painting, collision structural repair, automotive intro. What I gotta,
Why it's back.
okay.
That's just the way it was stated in the document.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. Oh, got you. So it's automotive intro. So intro to automotive intro. Okay, because I'm like, intro is not a class. So small engine repair, power motor sports repair, supply train intro. That's one class. Okay, an apprenticeship. I'm not going to include apprenticeship. I have some questions there, if that's okay. Yeah, that's recent questions I have. So yeah. And then the other clarification is in the technical changes, just I'm asking that we are consistent throughout the document. It comes with acronyms. Sometimes we have the acronym and then later we cite, like we'll have, I could give you some examples, but do I have one in there?
There's one lower in.
You get the idea, right? If just let's have a standard form. The acronym, usually you'd have what it is and then the acronym, and then you can use the acronym throughout the document. If people can just check that, because it was wide. And as I was reading through it, I was like, okay, I don't know what that acronym is, even though it may be listed down in the like your dictionary, or do you know what I'm saying? Down further. But when I was reading it, I was like, I don't know what that is. So I had to either look it up or whatever. And then it would, anyway, just make sure it's.
So at the top of the document, each document, we're hoping that there will be the full title with the acronym.
Well,
in
just whenever
parentheses.
they use the acronym, it doesn't have to be at the top, but just the first time you use it, just make sure we establish a process so it's clear.
Yeah, we'll fix that.
Yeah.
So
Okay, great.
that's it.
All right, so that's the motion. Did you get all of that, Andrea? Excellent. Talia, you're good with that? All right, any further discussion about those approvals and moving those forward to the board? If not, those in favor say aye. Aye. That's unanimous. Thank you. So now let's go back to, if we go to the top of the list, architecture and construction. Is that the first one that we are?
Yes. I just want to also be on the same page. So I'm not reading just out of context. Does that make sense? So if you can give me just a minute to move my document next to each other here. And those, I don't know if anyone's following online, but it probably would be good if we gave a page number.
So can I give you a hint, at least the way my document
okay.
works? So we tried last year, I tried to go in, once we combine all of these separate documents into one thing for you, so they're all together and you can go through them all. Page numbering at that point just becomes a mess.
That's right.
So if you'll go over, at least on my side, it's on the right-hand side of my screen, somewhere on your Adobe screen, you should see a page number. So the document has 568 pages.
Right.
You should be able to find the page that you're on. If you reference that page number, we'll all be able to follow along.
Okay.
Hopefully.
All right.
Yeah, you're right.
Do you see it?
Yeah.
I kind of missed. I know, I'm not sure.
So like it shows I'm on page 5.
Right.
But I'm actually on page 3.
Right. Okay. Okay.
So we would be referencing
That's the Adobe page
the
number.
Adobe page number.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Okay. Give me just 1 second. Let me make sure. I got to go back up to the.
But the document is also on page 3. So then, yeah, so keep going right there. So those are the page.
These are the ones we want to refer to. Okay.
Okay. So this one is, it would be page, just if anybody's following along.
7.
I have it on. Yes. Page 7, just so public or anybody that's following along. The recommended change is that instead of list certifications that promote sustainability, let me make sure I'm reading the whole piece, that promote sustainability in construction, the recommendation would be to change that to explore various Nope, sorry. List the benefits and drawbacks to sustainability certificates. And I can give my thoughts. Well, how do you want to do that? Do you want me to tell White my thoughts on it? And then we'd love to get any discussion or feedback. Specifically, there's a couple here. Well, I'm just going to share personal experience, but Energy Star, when we built our house, we bought Energy Star appliances, and then I had to rebuy a lighting to go in it a lot of my rooms, because the Energy Star did cut down on electricity, but it also made it so that I didn't have enough light in the room for reading, because it was it was weak. So though it had the certificate, right, it had the Energy Star marking and everything, it wasn't the most effective use of, you know what I mean? To do it again, I would have looked at some different things. I would have used some of them. Some of them are very beneficial, but I would have looked broader. So even in this case, for example, the Living Building Challenge, I have a lot of questions about this particular website. I don't even think it should be, well, that may have to be part of a motion. I don't think it should even be listed. It's like we're picking, there's a whole bunch of certifications out there. And I know it's other certifications, but this particular one, it's kind of maybe utopian in design. This idea that, everything will be like a flower petal and a rose and I'm like, I don't know if maybe other people's lives are like that. They can build like that, but some people just build because they are going to live in it and they want to make sure it is energy efficient, but they can't put all the cost into it to sustain something. So I just think there needs to be what are the benefits? What are the drawbacks? So we're looking at both sides. And then we'll do that. And then we can make a motion to strike the Living Building Challenge, but okay. I don't know if anybody else has.
So you don't need the leads. You don't need a lead.
No.
Yeah.
Sage Bowman. I am one of the CTE specialists here at USBE. And correct me if I'm wrong, but what you're asking is this particular one, Living Building Challenge, essential to this standard for students to learn about? And I think that one could be removed because it is a very high standard. Very few buildings actually meet that standard. These certifications are really in response to a lot of national and state regulations that are put out by the government. And so these certifications are in response to that, to help construction stay up to standard.
Are you okay?
So we can't really change what we're teaching if that change will not prepare them for what they're required to do in order to certify in a state or in a nation. Or
let me ask a clarifying question. These are recommended certifications. Some, for example, if you were building maybe something downtown Salt Lake, it may require that you meet some certifications. You may be building in Morgan, Utah, that may not have the same requirements. So while yes, there are requirements there, I think I want to make sure that when someone goes to build, that they don't feel hampered by regulation when they really, they could use it. In many cases, they may not need to. They may not get a plaque on the side of their building, right, that says we are, and I have a neighbor that has this because they did all electrical back in the 70s. And they've got this special plaque that they hammered into the wall of their house, and it doesn't mean much now, right? So it's that kind of a thing that, yeah, if you wanted to do that, that's great. But I think we just need to talk about the positives and negatives. So
let me just say one thing and then I'll let Sage answer. I apologize. Thank you. Remember, this is an entry-level exploration kind of course. The goal, as I understand it with this standard, would be that students understand that those certifications exist and that people do build with them. I think having the pros and cons is not necessarily a bad thing, but the goal really is just to help students understand that this exists. This is in the world. This is how some buildings are constructed and put together. But Sage, go ahead.
And really the purpose of the list is to guide students, but also guide educators. So if we're having a brand new educator teaching this course, giving them a direction of these are some of them plus others is a good place to start. I think there was a suggestion I had written on here. So I could suggest maybe a wording that I had thought of based on what you had sent before. Recognize common sustainability certificates and how they relate to compliance for local and national legislation for buildings. This is just
Oh, it's not in here then. Okay.
right. My
Okay.
response to
Okay.
you.
So say it one more time.
Recognize common sustainability certificates and how they relate to compliance for local and national legislation for buildings.
I still want the benefits and drawbacks, because I do think there are drawbacks even when the cost sometimes is prohibitive of some of these things, right? And that is something that if you're going to build something, right, you've got to, you don't,
So, but this is
Yeah.
referring to certifications, right?
right?
This isn't referring to building. This is referring to the certification that they may be able to
No,
earn.
but it has to do with the building,
Yeah, so
right?
this isn't a certification a student will earn in this particular instance. In most of our courses, yes, to
Okay.
what Chair Booth was saying. But in this particular instance, you're right. It's just referring
building
to
codes or
correct.
building recommendations or
Yes, it's how
not
buildings are
compliance.
built.
Yeah, it's like you're going to get the LEED certification on this, or yeah. So I think a familiarity is necessary, but I still like the drawbacks, but
How about if we combined them?
We
If
can
I
do
could
that.
Make that suggestion.
Yeah.
Recognize common sustainability certificates and discuss the benefits and drawbacks. Something to that
yeah,
effect.
I think that's fine with me. Anybody?
Yeah, that's great.
Do
Emily, you have it?
you think that when you, I mean, this isn't going to be a hill that I die on in any way, but when you start talking about the benefits and the drawbacks, it leans more into like, is it good for the government to regulate this or not? And I think this part is like, you should understand that there are certificates that you can get if you build a sustainable building with, low energy use or whatever. And so, I mean, I don't think we need to discuss the benefits and drawbacks, to just talk about how those are certificates that are available and sometimes required, but also not going to be a hill I die on.
I like including the benefits and drawbacks, because there actually is a huge, some would say, political movement towards the concept of sustainability. And that can price out a sustainable building, because to do it, you can't afford it. There comes a point where you can't afford all the new shiny gadgets that people are inventing. And then for the government to require those new shiny gadgets that price out affordable housing, that's a reality. Like that is manifesting in the market as we speak. And so, part of the arguments, even for local governments, I know down in our little neck of the woods, it's like, get rid of some of these regulations for building affordable housing. So I don't know. I think that it's a very relevant, and I think it's okay to talk to our kids about that, because, we do hear feedback like, why are we just keep doing 1 + 1? Why don't we learn about our finances? Why don't they tell us like how to work in the system that is, look at us, like laid out before us with people that just talk about rules and regulations all day. Like, we need to understand how engaged in that realm. So I think it's much better, because I do think it keeps the concept of what is sustainable relevant and at the forefront of our youth's mind.
Okay, just one more comment. Oh, you have.
No, go ahead.
It is, especially a lot of these buildings that are funded by taxpayer funding, right? It is costly to taxpayers when it's energy efficient, but it's not economically efficient. So I'm not asking to say don't consider these. Keep in mind, but I think we have to. There is an element of responsibility and that counterbalance and that discussion. So people are thinking, you know what I mean? It's not just this. It could be part of this and part of this, but there's an economic factor that even comes into taxpayer funded buildings, right? That I think people need to be aware of. So. Did someone write that up on the board? Do I need to read it out? Okay.
Do you want me to read
Do you
what
want
I
to
have?
read it? And then I'll reread it.
Yep.
So
I can't, for some reason, I can't edit your document, or else I'd drop it in.
I would need to substitute, right? go ahead and read it and then I'll make a substitute motion.
So what I put down that we discussed was recognize common sustainability certificates and discuss the benefits and drawbacks.
Okay.
Something to that effect.
Okay. So I would make, oh, go ahead. Anything you would change on that?
Can we just see that?
Yeah.
Recognize.
You should be able to edit now, Leah, if you have it where you can copy and paste.
One moment, please. Oh, I moved on in that document already. I'm way ahead of, let's see. Nope.
No.
I'm not going to be able to edit. So it is recognize common sustainability certificates and discuss the benefits and drawbacks.
It's and what's the last one?
And discuss the benefits and drawbacks.
Of what?
Benefits and drawbacks.
And from.
Can you fix the word sustainability? That should be sustainability.
Did you want more in there?
It's just, we're putting it in different places in here.
While we're doing that, can we also include in this motion to strike the, what was it, the other language? So it is the common ones and not kind of the fringe ones. So it's striking or living building challenge. So it's kind of a two-part to this. Or do you want that separate? The standard is that, and then it would list Energy Star, LEED, other certificates. But it'd be striking living building challenge. Well,
It's fine.
So we're leaving LEED.
I think so. Isn't that's very common? Like that's yeah. Yeah. And commonly required, right? I mean, it's in Utah, some of these, yeah. So I don't know if it's always required though, but a lot are. It might have been. Okay. Emily, do you have any feedback?
No, everybody gets it closer.
Okay.
Okay, so we have a motion, which I would read if I could see that small of print, but I can't. So I'll let the maker of the
You want me to
motion
read
read
it
it one
out?
more time.
Okay, so the motion that we're looking at is recognize common sustainability certificates and discuss the benefits and drawbacks. Yeah, something like that. Of each. And then a period. And strike living building challenge. Do I need to state that it's in electrician 1? No, it's not. It's what are we on?
It's in construction technology, strand 4, standard 2. That's on this document.
Okay, we probably need to, Michelle, don't you think? Be very specific. Okay. So where am I looking?
It's construction, it's
Okay, so construction technology, strand 4, standard 2. Just so that we're real exact if someone were to. Okay, that's
Terrific. So that's the motion. Seeing no further discussion or questions, those in favor say aye. Aye.
No.
Okay. We have 3 ayes and 1 no, no being board member Real. All right,
So
next motion.
So the next motion is in construction technologies standard or strand 4, standard 3, and it's just to add 2 other elements there. Did I just lose my Google Doc? Sorry. There it is. It would be to add clean coal technologies and natural gas to those. Do you have a suggestion? Okay.
We do, just a minute.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you restate your question?
Yeah, it would be to add to those, the list there, the solar, wind, geothermal, add clean coal technologies and natural gas.
Did you want to sustain human life? Do you need to add that?
Did I have that on there?
You did on the standard. So.
Oh, at the title of it. Yeah, actually, let's.
Just explore various sustainable building practices is more aligned with what we just did.
What is it?
So it would, well, let's talk about it. I'm going to throw it out there and talk about it. We can separate it out. So it would be to explore what we currently, that's right. I thought that was connected to the top one. Explore various building practices that help to sustain human life. Changing the title of that standard, right? Not standard. And then adding to it the clean coal technologies and natural gas. And then I can speak to that do we have that on there?
Do you have a response?
Yes, will you pull up your, yeah. So these practices are for the buildings sustaining themselves, not necessarily sustaining life, as was suggested. So a response that I might suggest to help make it more clear what this is, the intended purpose, is explore various sustainable, energy efficient building practices.
Okay. And I can tell you my thought, and then maybe we can make sure the reason why we build, not just energy, sustainable, is for human, right? For people. We build for people. So, but you're saying just focusing on the practices related to the building.
Correct.
So, okay. I don't know what we're weighing this out. And the reason why is so that we keep in mind, we don't lose the humanity in sustainability. I don't know if that makes sense, because we can do a lot of things that are not really, and just maybe giving you an example. I mean, we see Florida right now, as we've seen these different communities, they're affected by natural disaster. The quality of the building product, even though it may have been sustainable or whatever, it risks human life because it doesn't have those components. So I'm kind of weighing that out as I'm thinking about this, going, yeah, the building itself, yes, but why are we building the building itself and putting those things in there? Does it put people at risk because we may not be able to keep it heated if it's a long winter and we have no sun, right? So I'm trying to, what is the purpose? So I don't know if there's a.
What we're
So the first line.
Okay, so the comparison would be striking on standard 3. It would be possibly, right? We're still discussing that. Adding explore various building practices that help to sustain human life. I see that could be too narrow, right? That's what you're saying. It could be a little bit too narrow for what we're doing. It's still relevant, right?
Well, I think it's very relevant, but it's not what this strand is focused on. This strand is focused on building practices, and those building practices have to do with a lot of things. Certainly, one of the important things is sustaining human life, but mostly they're focusing on how those building practices work together to create a good building.
I would support this change of adding to help sustain human life, because I do believe that it probably brings it into why we're doing what we're doing. How is solar that impactful? Is wind, is geothermal? How does that, and at what capacity does it benefit or sustain human life? Like it is one and the same. So I
But
don't
just think in terms of the teacher or the curriculum now based on this strand, on this standard, what is our hope that they're going to teach? Are they going to be focusing on, got to make sure that we sustain human life in this, or are they going to be focusing in on the nuts and bolts, the basics of building construction? And you've got these options. You need to choose carefully among all those options in order to build this building. And certainly all that we're doing in construction is to support human life, and we got to be smart about that. But I don't know that a teacher and a construction person is going to be getting into the aspirations of human life. They are focusing on, I mean, I'm just thinking of my father-in-law who was an electrician. He was not necessarily thinking of Energy Star and is there enough light in this room. He was making sure that the connection was good, that he pulled that I pulled the wire for him in the right ways, and that he got it put together so that it was safe and it would function and it would do whatever it was that the buyer or the builder, the person that he was working for, was according to code and all of that sort of thing. He's not really thinking in that realm of how do I sustain the human life that's going to live in this building that I am doing the electrical wiring in.
So I'm looking at the title of the course. So I'm just going to read that just so we can keep going back and forth and keep balancing till we get where we need to go. And I think maybe adding some of your wording would be valuable here, but it is the introductory course focuses on construction technology. Students will gain an understanding of how construction technologies impact policies, the environment, society, and economy. So it is in that realm. That's why we're asking the questions. It is, how does this impact society? How does this impact the environment? How does it impact economy? Students will develop a foundation. We're doing foundational skills, right? In essential abilities and attitudes that will in turn expand their occupational opportunities in the world of construction. So it's an overview, right? Why do we build these type of technologies? So I think we have to ask, why do we build these type of technologies? That's what we're asking. And I don't want to get lost, but I also don't want to get lost in why we're doing it too, right? Some of those foundational things. So if we can balance that somehow.
I think it's a lot to why people would choose to build. So students, you're going to have your students here deciding on what area they might want to focus. And I have good friends that did the geothermal approach. And I also have somebody that is completely obsessed with the concept of a smart home and in utilizing technology, and that those little square sensors are in every single room they're checking like, oh, the living room is 75 degrees, but the bedroom is 69. Like there's this whole realm, but yet the other person, builds their house into a dirt hill and stacks that dirt up on top, and then they face their windows they're completely off grid. They just built a fence out of hay bales and had a big party and did the plaster, with the kids doing the mud and the straw thing. And wow, like it was amazing. Like they were totally off grid. And I think that applies to all demographics of students. And so for the purpose of sustaining human life, each family is so uniquely different, but they did it to sustain their human life, their family, their area. And both are, one's in urban and one is as rural as you can get. And so you bring in that humanness to this anyway. Again, I do support this. I'm probably ready to vote.
Okay, tell me what your wording was that you had recommended, because if we maybe could put that at the first, something about energy technologies or something, right?
Explore various sustainable energy efficient building practices. explore various sustainable, energy efficient building practices.
And then leaving on. Yeah, she's on with that. Energy efficient.
Yeah, I like that.
And then add the other one. Okay. All right.
Did you?
We could.
You are missing it.
I'm not saying we have everything. Do we have everything on efficient building practices? Because we do.
So just as a orient to this, so when I'm typing all of it, it doesn't show up and I'm all the way done and then I exit out of the cell and then go back into the cell.
Okay.
It's going up.
Okay.
So as I
When we hit reload, it's showing up.
yeah.
Okay, so let me just push back one little more time and then I'll shut up. So without Emily and Jenny's explanation, how will the teacher who is teaching this course, who's coming at it as a construction specialist, who actually knows how to do all the stuff that you've got to do to build that building or build or do whatever it is they're going to do as part of that building, how will they know what you're talking about? When just from that strand, because that's all the clues that they've got is just that 3 little words that said something about human life. And they could read because that's just kind of in a different world from where they operate every day. My father-in-law would, he was a brass tacks, down to earth kind of guy. Of course, what he was doing was to sustain human life, but he doesn't think like that. He thinks about wire and about electricity and doesn't want to get shocked and about, doing a good job so it looks good, that it's perfectly whatever. He used to yell at me when I was pulling wire for him because I wasn't doing it. You're doing that like a pianist or like a musician, and you got to do this and this and this. How do we help? How do we bridge from what we're saying on the strand so that it then makes some next implementation in terms of implementation? We take the next step into developing a curriculum. And then how does the teacher who lives in a different realm understand what we want them to do based on those 3 words so that it includes, that's all I mean.
Can we
We've got enough
divide
there
it?
that it will have
The
any
list and the description?
impact at all.
Make a motion to divide.
You mean the top from
Yeah.
the bottom? Okay.
Cheryl, I'm going to make a motion to divide the description and the list.
Terrific. So we have a motion to divide the description and the list. Any discussion?
No, I think that's fine.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we're now divided. Thank you.
And then I'd like to make an amendment to the list
Great.
to add nuclear energy.
In addition to.
Mm-hmm. Yes, unless it can just be a friendly.
It's a friendly.
Okay, then we don't need.
Friendly. Okay,
Yeah.
good. Got it.
What's it?
Wow.
Well,
This is something.
are
I
there
gotta
any
learn
we've
something.
missed, right? Because there's a lot.
In my home. In my home.
I don't think so. That seems
Okay.
a pretty comprehensive list.
Yeah.
Okay. And this may be one of those in 2 years, we're going to miss 5, right? Because I think technology is advancing so quickly that on these things. So
It's really bad for 4 years.
I know. It'll be way outdated by then, but
Whatever.
Okay.
What is post-nuclear will be.
can we,
figured out.
can it, whatever passes here and whether it passes or not on the first one, is it possible to ask those in the field about this language and what they would do or wouldn't do? Because I think it's a fair argument. Do they know, the teachers know what they would need to do with that, right?
Yeah, I think it's a great concept. And I think it's an important concept, but I don't know how to
Well, I just want it foundationally to be people to be thinking, why are we doing this and not just doing stuff, right?
Totally.
That's a whole different perspective. So
I think also, I mean, the reason why I support it maybe is a little bit of pushback on what I think is an echo chamber that humans are destroying everything and there should be less of us. And that's kind of, you can teeter into that belief when you talk about sustainability, like you just can. Like you listen to enough TED Talks and people out advocating for sustainability and about climate change, like enemy number one is humans, and it shouldn't be that. Now you can restructure that and say, okay, maybe what they're saying, which I would present it this way, that we are stewards of the earth, we are caretakers of the land, we are, but that means that humans are stewards of the earth and we are caretakers of the land. That doesn't mean that there should be less of us. That means that we are here for that purpose. And that would be like my belief system. And so it's like, maybe there's an element here that I advocate for humanity in the discussion of sustainability. And I want this generation to understand that because they are here, they are not destroying the earth. That's not cool. Like no child should have to have an education that makes them leave that realm believing that, and then to isolate themselves into a little 10 by 10 sustainable box their whole life until they die. Like that's not living. I'm gonna quote the Crudes here. Like that's not living. That's just no. Anyway, it's a good show. But I think it's relevant. You can tell I have kids. Anyway, so that's where I am coming with. I don't know.
Okay, well, great.
Okay.
So we've had a great discussion here, and now what should we do?
I think we could probably vote on the FER. Oh, yes.
Can I just make one suggestion? As you were talking, Board Member Green, you may like this or you may not. You won't hurt my feelings either way. But what about adding in the description of the standard something about impacting the quality of human life?
I like that.
I think that's good.
So it would read, explore various sustainable, energy efficient building practices that impact the quality of human life.
Now that I think my father-in-law would get that. He goes, oh yeah, I'm doing that. Why? And it's a good reminder of why I'm making the choices I'm making in terms of the resources that I'm using and the approach I'm taking, because
we'll have to go back.
I'm going to make things good.
I think we'll have to move these motions and then go back and make that motion though, because it's at the top, right?
Well, you've divided the two. You have the description of the standard now, which you've not voted on yet. And you have the bullet list that you've not voted on yet.
Oh, you're talking in the strand? You want to?
No, in the standard. So the description for standard 3 that.
Okay, go ahead. I missed something then.
That would read then, explore various sustainable, energy efficient building practices that impact and their impacts on the quality of human life, something to that.
Okay.
Does that get at what you're trying to?
I like it.
Emily, what do you?
It's less extreme than sustain human life.
And I think that's a really wonderful concept. If that's all they get is that much, that's a good thing for them to be thinking about as they're exploring this particular realm of possible employment and life's work.
Maybe I'm the only one, but when you travel and you go to a hotel and you turn on every light that's in your room and you still can't see your hand in front of your face because the lights are so dim, that quality of life is not what I could sustain if I had to live like that for the rest of my life.
Yeah, good. Okay, so now
let me look at it again. That's where we at.
Do you want to take that standard 3 and do we want to solidify the motion and vote?
That impact the quality of human life and have it read and the impact on the quality of human life. Or something like that. We can technically word that sentence. Get the others and that's and that's.
And I do like that. I mean, I've been studying, I know that there's a lot of discussion about new energy technologies. So we've had coal. Coal has brought 700 million people out of poverty. Like, it has supplied them with electricity. And you know, you look at the mortality rates on AC or heat; those two alone sustain life, and the ability to access that comes through the partnerships of those technologies. So we're all vilifying coal, yet it has produced the world in which we live.
'Cause I just had some.
So to be able to say, okay, we've sustained life to this point, now we have the luxury of even developing that and refining that energy to, you know, a next level. So it's just like reposturing, representing this vilifying of man's mind of, you know, what created the world that we live in, and continues to sustain that reality. I think that's important. So I'm okay with the quality of human life, because I think that's probably a more broad discussion. Hopefully that they would be presented with these realities about coal. So.
Okay. Thank you for that comment.
Do you want me to read it again now?
That would be great.
Okay. All right. Construction Technology, Strand 4, Standard 3 to read, explore various sustainable energy efficient building practices and the impact on the quality of human, that's not it. Is that it? Okay, and the impact on the quality of human life.
And their impact, or?
We'll wordsmith that.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Terrific.
And then we'll be able to see it for board if we needed to. Okay.
Terrific. Okay, I think that's a great motion. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Thank you. That's unanimous. And now let's go to the list.
So I just have a question to ask here, and I think this is I just got a text here from someone, but just asking this question. We don't put nuclear in our home, but yeah, I'm just looking at it saying, are we just making sure? Yeah, the overall, okay, so I'm just making sure we're kind of, yeah. Okay, okay.
Arco, Idaho.
Okay, so just making sure we're kind of in the realm where we need to be. Okay.
So are you going to make a motion there?
I am. The motion is, put my glasses on, add natural gas, clean coal technologies, and nuclear energy to the bulleted list.
Terrific. So we have the motion before us. Standard 3, explore various sustainable building practices. We already did that. So the list is, and I'm not going to redo that. The list is solar, including passive and thermal mass, wind, geothermal, hydroelectric, off-grid building, gray water, compost toilets, etc., building management systems, smart homes, engineered and recyclable building materials, nuclear, clean coal, and natural gas.
And I'd put clean coal technologies.
Clean coal technology.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, that's the motion. Any further questions or discussion? Those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. For you and I. We have unanimous decision here, folks. Let's move on.
So would we now pass this out? I don't think I have other amendments.
So there's one more on that.
Oh, there is? Oh, sorry. Don't know how. Oh, yeah. So down on strand 4, it would be an additional one. Sorry, let me go back to my. It would just be adding on there, evaluate how regulation relates to the cost of building a home or business. Does it need to be home or business, or just, can we do just buildings in general? Oh, yeah, please.
Sure. So the level that's being asked here is pretty extensive to evaluate for an entry level course. So I would suggest discuss how regulations impact the cost of building various structures.
Okay,
Sounds good.
sound good? Okay.
Want us to
Yep.
reread it again?
Yeah. Read it one more time and then I'll,
So we would add, let me just be clear, construction technology, strand 4, we would add a new standard number 4 that would read, discuss how regulations impact the cost. I assume someone's typing, impact the cost of building various structures. I didn't hear keyboard going.
okay, so the motion would be on strand 4, or construction technology, strand 4, add a standard 4 that states, discuss how regulation impacts or impact, I don't know what we have, impacts or impact the cost of various building structures.
Thank you. That's the motion. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, those in favor say aye. Aye. That is unanimous. Thank you.
I would move that we pass out of committee construction technologies as amended to send to the board. Do we need to add anything more to that?
Thank you. We have a motion to pass construction technology onto the board for their review and approval. Any discussion? Seeing none, those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. That is unanimous. Moving on. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for the great feedback. Appreciate it. Okay, the next one's TV Broadcasting 1. This is page 68 in the document. We did that. That was that first motion we made, right? That's okay. In case I missed something.
Okay, page 68.
Yes. So adding a standard between 1 and 2. And the standard would have to,
This is strand 1.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know. What strand are we in?
So on page 68, you would be, well, there are 2 strands, strand 1 or strand 2. You'd have to.
Well, it would be strand 1 then, and then it would be a standard between, so it would be adding an additional standard in, but it would sit between 1 and 2.
So strand 1.
Yeah, so you'd shift all those down.
Got it.
Okay, and so it would read something like, okay, let's see, explore journalism ethics, and then what, highlight, or I don't know, whatever that is, but free exchange of information, responsibility for accuracy, honest and fair, serving the public, and accountable and transparent.
Wow. So we're really writing a new standard for this industry.
Journalism ethics. So the yes,
I'm making a joke.
You're just, I know, it's like, it's not there.
Based on the last week.
They are. A big one.
Okay. Well,
Is there any resources out there for this?
I would assume so.
Okay, I was gonna say, kind of looked at what was out there and pulled in some. Do you have recommendations on that?
So Christina, this is Christina Yamada. She's already looked at this. It's a fine addition.
Okay.
Hi, Christina Yamada, so a CTE education specialist. So yeah, I did look these over, and there are resources that we can help teachers understand what we want to portray in this strand and standard. And my committee was okay with adding that.
Okay, and can I just speak just real quick? In looking at this, the standard with newsworthy, right? That those things are newsworthy, but it didn't really speak to the quality of the production, right? Of the news. So that's why it was like what's out there with ethics with the reporting. And so good. Thank you.
Okay, great. Do you want to form your motion officially?
Sorry, I thought I did, but I can officially form it. So the motion, but the motion I'm asking for is in TV broadcasting 1 and standard 1 between, oh, sorry. All right, let me read this again.
Strand.
The TV broadcasting 1, standard 1, strand to add a new standard or sorry,
Strand.
you have it written up there, right? It's strand 1, not standard 1. Okay, one more time.
In between standard 1 and 2.
Yes.
Of strand 1.
It would be yes, strand 1, standard. New standard 2. There we go. Okay, so in TV broadcasting 1, strand 1 to add a strand 2.
Standard 2.
Oh my goodness. Standard 2 that says explore journalism ethics. And then it would have free exchange of information, responsibility for accuracy, honest and fair, serving the public, and accountable and transparent. Did I get that right? Okay.
Okay, that sounds great. Any discussion or questions? Seeing none, those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay. I think that was unanimous.
Okay, I would move that we move TV broadcasting 1, that we approve TV broadcasting 1 on first reading and move as amended and move to the board for second and final reading. Did I say that right? Someone type up something for me so I can read it every time.
That's good.
Does that work?
I think what you just said was perfect.
Okay.
We're moving
There you go. Committee.
TV broadcasting 1 and 2, or just 1?
Just 1, 2's already approved.
Okay. TV broadcasting 1, we're moving to the board for final approval. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Thank you. That's unanimous.
All right, the next one is.
Thank you, Christine.
Yeah, are you here for that? Okay. Video production capstone 1, is that right? Yes. Oh, okay. Video production capstone. And it's just striking 21st century literacy from the description, course description. Yeah, and the reason why is it's not, we cite 21st century literacy, but there is nowhere in the actual standards that we even articulate what 21st century literacy is. This is the only place it's cited in the whole document. So if you want to check that real quick. Yeah, so I didn't know, I couldn't even, when I started trying to say, well, what is that? It's not used anywhere. So it doesn't, I don't think it takes away. It would read, a capstone is a course designed to teach the process for the commercial or for commercial marketing industry, for the commercial marketing industry. It's just fluff words right there. So that's what my recommendation is. Oh, I think, maybe you misunderstood what I was, is that what? But I'm just wondering because I don't see the motion the way I sent it in, so. Yeah, it's just striking 21st century literacy from the course description.
Any feedback? Good. Okay, great. So the motion is to strike 21st century.
Hold on just a second. Do you need a minute, Andrea?
Yeah, I'm letting Patty and I both type at the same time, so we keep messing with each other, so.
Yeah, so for clarification, I am going to delete to teach the process as necessary versus, and only say amend the video production capstone page 115. Amend the video production capstone page by striking 21st century from the course description. That's fine. Okay.
are you wanting to have the language there to teach the processes necessary for success in commercial and marketing industry? Is that the language you want to have sitting there? Or if we just strike that, let's see, it says, is the designed to teach the process for the commercial and marketing industry.
That wasn't our suggestion. We've not made any.
Oh, okay. So if we just struck that, and then you could just, if you needed to make a technical change, make sure the wording fit whatever's left there. Let me go to the page number.
Oh, you know what? That comes from your email. Column C is from your email. So that's what you sent us to teach the processes necessary.
Okay, maybe I did. That was a couple of days ago.
And that is preferred.
That's preferred. Okay, so let's get this right then. So striking 21st century and making sure it reads to teach the processes necessary for success in the commercial and marketing industry. It's over in the other column. Yeah. Yeah, if you just want to move it over.
There now. Okay, yeah. Does that look right? Yes, that's all.
Okay.
Okay.
Do you want to read that just as it is now on the document? It's typed up there for you.
Yeah, I can. Is it the same that's on my? Yeah, it probably is. Okay. Amend video production capstone by striking 21st century literacy from the course description to read to teach the processes necessary for success in the commercial and marketing industry. So we need to add, just so it's accurate on our literacy at the end of, there we go. That's it.
Thank you. That's a great motion. I'm not going to read it. We just heard it. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
It's unanimous. Moving on. Thank you, Christina.
Okay, so I can move that course, but I think the digital media capstone, the only thing there was the question around the acronym. We've already taken care of that. So I'll move both of these at the same time.
Great.
So the motion is that the committee approves the following CTE courses, including any technical changes. I'm just going to read at the top here, technical changes, and recommends they are forwarded to the board for final approval. And the two courses are
Video production capstone.
video production capstone and digital media capstone.
Thank you. You've just heard the motion. Those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. That's unanimous.
Okay, the next one is exploring business, finance, and marketing. That's page 168. Okay, let me get to the, so it would be changing the standard. I don't have a list of what standard it is. So it'd be changing, so it would be strand 2, standard 2. And the modification would be explain how prosperity in business allows for choice around opportunities to give back to families and communities. And then changing, you would leave charitable giving, employee care and treatment, but then you would strike environmental impact and sustainability. And in place of that, put stewardship and care for the community and environment. And this is the reason why. Someone's laughing over here. I've got something sitting on my shoulder. Concern here has to do with the only way a corporation can give back is when they are able to actually be financially secure or stable or whatever, they have an increase they can give back. this particular item to me leans into the ESG, even though it doesn't say that. It's that corporate social responsibility, as if the corporation somehow, I'm sorry, as if the society was responsible for the corporation instead of the business itself, because it's productive, is able to give back to its community. So hopefully I articulated that right, but that's the idea behind this, is that there's the success of a business allows it to be make choices, and that's it. It's choices that they shouldn't be forced into an idea of social responsibility. So that's the reason for those. And I'm eager for your feedback.
I can just say, as Rachel and I talked about this potential amendment, that my only response would be that corporate social responsibility is the industry standard language. That's what is used. That's how they refer to it. Whatever you all choose to do will be fine.
I do like the new language as a small business owner. The presumptive nature of this realm of ESG is, I have no words other than when you are in business, that weight is 100% on you. And the goal is that you do provide because you've made it, that charitable giving, the quality employment, employee programs and treatment. My computer just turned off. But to presume I think to break free from the vilification that ESG implies to small business owners and corporate is wrong and very misleading. So I do like, without getting too controversial, I do like this language better. And if I may share also just a personal experience, as we were fundraising for our school through the PTA, we'd put together a banner fundraiser. And so they buy a banner, and we raised that banner for them during our specific event that was taking place. And then that amount obviously goes towards funding those programs in the school. It was the small businesses more so than these big, businesses that were giving back. But also, I recognize as a small business owner, you'll have people lining outside your door every single day looking for donations for every single cause. So the weight of that is real. And you do have to set aside a specific budget on what those donations look like in a year's time. And then the other dynamic that comes in is what your industry is also affects what kind of development needs to happen because of the culture of your business and the demographic that you reach. And so those types of programs kind of organically grow and build as your company grows and builds. And so it's almost like we want to make sure that that always gets to be sovereign and unique to corporate businesses and to small business owners so that they can freely thrive because of that, that dream of owning and developing a successful business. And so anyway, we spent some time discussing and reviewing this, and I understand that that's like the industry language, but it's also kind of a pushback that it's a little bit disconnected with some reality. So anyway.
Would it be possible to explain the overall nature of small business and corporate social responsibility?
It's the social responsibility that gets complicated, because what are you who's responsible for who? And I think this puts it back into order, that the business itself is its own sovereign entity, and that they make the choice versus society makes the choice for them, and that they have to adhere to societal choices on certain issues. That it becomes either groupthink or right. And so I worry about that change out of there. So
how do we counteract the fact that nationally and industry terminology is that? Can we say that and then give our explanation of our concern so that because they can't we don't want them to be confused by, well, what are they talking? What is the industry talking about here? I mean, we're talking about, so how can we merge the two together so that we clarify what's important to us, but doesn't ignore what they're going to have to deal with because everybody else is going to use that terminology.
Are you wanting me to? I think this is good. This is a good start, right? This is a good start to change perception of business and that accountability piece. I understand what you're saying, but I guess we could define the concern around the other, but I don't know if that's really where we want to go with this. So I think we'd rather just talk about how the benefits of business give back to their communities because they're successful and they can choose that, not that society choosing that for them. But I don't know that we want to define that. We could, but then I think we start getting into, okay.
Okay, great. So do you want to make that formal motion and we'll move?
Yep, I'll make the formal motion. Hold on, I gotta get down to the page where I'm at. Does it have the, yep, it does. Okay, amend exploring business, finance, and marketing strand 2, standard 2 to read. Explain how prosperity in business allows for choice around opportunities that give back to families and communities. It leaves charitable giving, employee care and treatment. It strikes environmental impact and sustainability and adds stewardship and care for the community and environment. That's the motion.
My only pushback would be explain how, blah, blah, blah. So this is a standard.
So what would you, instead of explain?
Well, when they get to curriculum and what's the teacher going to do in the classroom, then that's what they're going to do is explain. But the standard needs to be, understand or, here's the goal.
Would you like, what word would be better to go there? Do you want to understand instead of just explain? I agree, Randy. That's a good call.
It's specialist. So typically the standards are directives to teachers. So
Yeah.
Understand is like what the student would come away with, they would understand, but
Okay.
the teacher's going to explain. So I would use explain, explore, describe, those sort of words in that moment.
Okay.
If that's what you're arguing or debating.
But that's still.
It could be discussed. I don't think explore gets.
Is in a
Yeah.
standard. I mean, are those other
Explain
standards?
how business, that moment right there.
It could be explain. We have explain another, or describe, explain.
Discuss. It's more about the depth. How far do you want them to go? How deep?
Okay. I'll withdraw my comment.
Okay.
I was just.
No, you're good.
I
It's
just
good to
think
ask.
Maybe we get a little fuzzy in what is the role of the standard? What is the role of the curriculum? What is the role of the teacher? What's the role of the student?
This one probably is explain.
We're in class. So it's
Yeah.
just introductory
Good.
for
So,
junior high.
but it's a
level
good
kids.
question.
Great.
So, okay. I made the motion, but
Yeah.
do you want me to read it again? I can read it.
Okay, so we have the motion before us and I like the clarification and I like the opportunity that it provides in the state of Utah for our teachers to open the minds of our students into some new perspectives, important perspectives they need to consider, as many of them will be small business owners in various communities and as we're growing across the state. So I would read it to you, but I can't. So
Want me to read it again?
Yeah.
I can read it again. It's okay. I can read it.
Click on it too. I'm trying to get out of it. I'm trying not to click on those.
If it's okay, we could just say to read and then on the side it shows what was struck.
Mhm.
And
Okay.
to read just means what is on there. So now,
Okay. So the motion is that we amend exploring business, finance, and marketing strand 2, standard 2 to read. Explain how prosperity in business allows for choice around opportunities that give back to families and communities. charitable giving, employee care and treatment, stewardship and care for the community and environment.
Very good. Thank you. That's our motion and we're sticking by it.
I think that was it, wasn't it? I
Yeah,
just
yeah.
put reads because they couldn't do the strike through. So that's okay.
Great. We have the motion. Any discussion? Those in favor say aye. Aye. Okay, we have one no from Board Member Rio.
If it's okay on the next one, digital marketing, let's do digital marketing and then I'll include both of these in the pass, in a motion to pass them.
Okay.
And I just had a question. I just don't understand this phrase, paying for unlimited use of photos, and I can reference what's on page, well, I don't know what page it's on.
And I think I know the answer to that, but I'm sure staff have an answer, but oftentimes in marketing, you're making materials, and especially in digital marketing, and there are subscriptions that you can purchase that allow you access to photos to use rather than having to have your own photos and graphics. So like stock photo or Envato. I mean, there's like a bunch of subscriptions you can pay for, so you have access to graphics and photos to use for your marketing materials. Am I right?
That is right.
Good.
Okay, and just so referencing this, it's in Strand 2, Content Marketing Standard 2, and it's paying for unlimited use of photos, i.e. 5,000 for a photo to be used in any way AI can think of. So I was just trying, like, it had to do with why are we attaching AI to do you know what I mean?
Sorry. The standard is on AI, so explore how industry is adapting and creating content with AI. And so
Okay.
it's talking about this new kind of world of photo use. I think it's a little unfinished sounding, right?
That's what yeah. So that's why I was like, does it need to be cleaned up somehow?
Yeah, I'm open to suggestions. Maybe I was thinking it's probably a little bit more relevant now to talk. I mean, a year later, AI, we've seen a lot of changes.
Do we even want to include it?
I think we could easily adapt it to like discuss issues around copyright and royalty use in AI image or image creation.
I would suggest to leave it more broad at this point because it is changing so rapidly.
So we can leave it the way it is. I just wanted to make sure I understood, especially
we can strike it if you want to. I think maybe issues with deep fakes wouldn't be a bad thing, or talking about copyright usage with AI generated images. There's some.
Okay, so maybe we can just strike that and then keep deep fakes on there and then copyright issues with images, something like that. Does that keep it broad enough?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, so make the motion would be to strike paying for unlimited use of photos, i.e. 5,000 for the photo to be used in any way AI can think of. We'd keep deep fakes, and I guess it would just be probably
a bullet, possibly.
A bullet, yep. And then what was the other one? I just can't remember what
copyright and royalty.
Yeah, copyright and royalty
issues with AI generated images, maybe.
Okay, issues with AI generated images.
Copyright and royalty issues for AI generated images with AI generated images. Sounds perfect.
Perfect. Okay, I just was not sure what that all referenced. And so when I read through it, I was like, I don't know what we're doing. I get the idea you can change it if you buy it, right? But I didn't know why 5,000 photos or anyway. So,
yeah.
Okay, perfect.
What do you want us to look at?
We can flip back. We did.
That's the old.
Okay, flip back. Yeah.
So we're striking paying for unlimited use of photos, i.e. blah, 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 all the way to the end of that sentence. We're keeping as a continued bulleted list, right, Rachel? We'll add issues with deep fakes and then another bullet that says copyright and royalty issues with AI generated images. Mm-hmm.
Issues to deep fake and then what?
Next bullet, copyright and royalty issues with AI generated images.
What are you writing?
Good. All right, we've got a motion before us. It's on the screen.
Okay. All right, so this is in digital marketing Strand 2, Standard 2, right?
Like none of them work. They're all blurry. I don't know if when you print them out there.
I'll ask that in a minute. Okay.
I have a question.
Please.
So we had this conversation like a year and a half ago, and it was just about like the ethics around AI. Where are we with that?
Yeah, I'm just trying to.
I'm like, I think yeah, Deputy Norman.
Look how many. All of them. I think it's just.
I'm wondering, do we want to have Matt Winters come up as well, or do you want to say where that's at with industry? I'm not sure how broad your question is. Like, where are we at in teaching standards to kids about AI, or is it where are we at as a state with?
Well, I think I know we are trying to stay ahead of it, and that lets us know what we're missing here. I just wonder here if in standard 2, it seems that there could be just a little like blip of ethics. And again, I recognize that we're all trying to figure out what that looks like when it comes to AI. I think we're bringing in some of those ethics that could be breached or broken, utilizing AI maybe in the wrong way if we're not keeping, if we are developing deep fakes, if we're using things that we're not supposed to, stealing from somebody, their image, their voice, their what, which it's a thing.
Uh-huh.
And I don't know. I know that this is just a high school class, but I was wondering a year and a half later, like, where are we with that? And do we have anything that would be relevant to this standard?
I wonder if like the idea here is that in marketing, in digital marketing, there are the technology of AI. For me, if I were teaching this class, I would talk to students about how important it is to not use AI for everything because it's sometimes can be wrong, but that also you need to be aware that if you create an AI image, you do not own that image and that you can be sued for using an AI image or misrepresenting something in your marketing materials, that especially if you're trying to sell something. So for example, at Salt Lake Community College, if I created a digital ad, which we do all the time, that has a photo that we did not purchase and own as an institution, we can get in huge copyright and trademark issues, whatever. So I think that's kind of, if in relation to AI and digital marketing, AI is like, but like just for digital marketing, feels like those are the kind of things that would be important for students to know, like, be careful in using AI for marketing materials because sometimes it's not always accurate and sometimes, and you need to be able to, you have to own the photos before you. So I don't know, that's my thought. Well, I think from this change, it's a lot more broad copyright royalty issues. But I think what we have up here is good, but I think that I'm certain in 6 months it will be different. So that's also true.
How about tomorrow? It will be different.
Probably.
Yeah, I'm wondering on here, this is so much more broad. We could talk about royalty issues. We could talk about images. We could talk about everything that you have. Maybe we need to keep it broad, which is emerging challenges and issues related to AI. We could even say emerging challenges, issues, and policy, so that we're aware of policy or law that also governs that, because it is changing and we're having our LEAs, because the board passed that guideline, of getting out what that looks like. And then our LEAs are creating policies as well, what that looks like. So that would capture the broader things, because as soon as we just say deep fakes and then we're going to say something else and then AI, and also the way stated, it refers to AI almost as a person, because AI doesn't think of, as well. So we got to make sure that it's a tool. It's not a person. It's not a thing that's thinking as well. So if we just talk about emerging issues, challenges, and policy and law related to AI.
I like that.
Just an idea.
I think it's an excellent idea. I think we are in an advantageous position in the state of Utah, because particularly Deputy Superintendent Norman and her team have been on the front edge and have been aggressive in getting ready for what has been coming down the pike. And I just had dinner with two top executives in education from the state of Idaho on Monday night, and they were saying, "We are just lost. What are you doing? What is Utah doing with AI? Because we need help. We have no idea." And so the fact that we are already where we are is a great place to be, and the fact that we are continuing to be open to the emerging difficulties, challenges, and everything else is such a good place to be in. I'm so grateful for the staff that have been leading that exploratory journey. It's kind of like the Lewis and Clark expedition into AI. We are definitely forging into new territory, and we'll continue to clarify as things become more solid and less fluid. So I appreciate keeping it broad, but acknowledging the fact that you better be sitting on the edge of your seat, because exciting things are changing every day that you're going to be responsible to keep on top of. Nobody else is going to be sued except you if you do something that you shouldn't do. So don't just ignore it and think, oh, it'll all be all right. It won't be all right if you're not smart.
Do you have a suggestion?
I just wondered if Patty, are you working on a suggestion, Patty?
So what
Or do you have one? Yeah.
So what I did, yeah. So I'm not sure what you want to have stay and what you want to leave. And so in writing this, these were all of the things that were in there. And then we have the emerging issues, opportunities, policies, and law related to AI. So I'm not sure what you want to maintain in this, and I'm not sure what you want to have taken out. So if you want to look at that for a second.
How does that look to you, Jenny?
Yeah. Yeah. Do you want all three? You want all three on those, or just the?
That would be it.
What do you think?
Is related AI related, AI related images and content.
That might be good.
Can we add and content? Because I don't know. I mean, if it's digital marketing, it's making a flyer.
Right. And, or if you are giving a presentation and you have AI build your entire presentation and things like that. So content is definitely there.
Yeah, good. Excellent point.
Okay.
Okay, you ready to make the real?
I'll read it off. I have one more suggestion on where it actually has the standard. Explore how industry is adapting and creating content with AI. And I'm wondering if at the end of that we could put as a tool, something about it being a tool and not, yeah.
And not replacing us as humanoids.
Yep. So if we could add just as a tool at the end of that, does that work? Okay. Just kind of puts it back into perspective once again. What is this for? So, okay, let me see if I can read this here. So we're in digital marketing strand 2, standard 2, and actually changing the standard to add as a tool. And then on, standard 2, sorry. Striking pay for unlimited use of photos and what's there, and add issues to deep fake. And then another bullet that would be copyright and royalty issues related to AI images and content, and then adding emerging issues, opportunities, policies, and law related to AI as a tool. I guess we can have it there twice. Does that work? Okay.
I don't have the first one you put, so I'm going to say right here, add to strand 2, standard 2, overarching description. Is that what we're calling it?
It's this, the standard, whatever the first line is there, whatever you want to call that. Yeah.
Okay.
I'll wait till you have it, then we'll.
And we can get rid of the one at the end. I just had added it there. So if you want.
Oh,
go
okay, yeah.
ahead, yeah.
That's fine if we want to move it at the end. I think just putting it up there works.
There we go.
Are we good?
Yep.
We got it all?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, so the motion has been edited before our very eyes, and it's before us on the screen right now. No further pending any further discussion or questions. Please vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
That is unanimous. Thank you.
Just one statement in general, and maybe you can read this. Some of the images were really not great. Okay, just wanted to make sure that I didn't know if it was just mine with the draft being over the top of it or something, but just it was kind of tricky to read some of those.
I
So
do have to just say that Board Member Green, as we asked for the vote, say aye, and we all said, I said not to be confused with AI. I thought that was just too good to let pass. Thank you. We needed that at 10:40 in the morning.
yeah, okay. I would like to move, help me that I didn't miss anything. So I need to move the exploring business, finance, and marketing, and moving digital marketing. And then the cyber forensics, because that one I had a question on, so I don't believe it was included up above. So those three. That the committee approves those 3 courses, including technical changes, and recommends that they're forwarded to the board, to the full board for final approval.
Thank you for reading that motion. All those in favor say
Well-
aye.
Cyber forensics. I don't think it was included up there because there was a question here. So.
Okay, so those are the 3.
Mhm.
All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
We're unanimous. Moving on.
I'm skipping the K-12, just reminding people that will be later. So I'm going into the Pro Start. I'm going to put my recommendation out there, but do you want to tell us the information, then I'm going to put my recommendation and then we can talk.
You bet. So our our Pro Start courses are national standards that are owned by the National Restaurant Association. And so they're here for our teachers to be able to use. They relate directly back to the certifications that are offered through the Pro Start program. So they're not our standards to change. However you'd like to move forward, we're happy to help as we can.
So the question then would be, I mean, there's a couple of things I would argue here. Whether there's some lack of compliance, maybe even with Utah law, with the way some of these are worded. How do we get them changed nationally?
Lola Evans, CTE Ed Specialist. We can speak with the Utah Restaurant Association and ask them to take our suggestions to the national board.
Okay. Well, I'm going to argue for that. So I know it's out there a little bit, but I think it's worth the argument. So in Pro Start 1, Strand 3, Standard something that I can't read on here. Standard 1, it says, explain how stereotypes and prejudices can negatively affect working together. I would strike that. So, and I think the argument being wherever you focus your attention is where people kind of, even yesterday, I don't know if you followed along in board meeting with the myths and the, right, that if you're focusing somewhere, people can't always sort out what's the reality. So I don't know that this is needed in here. It's got some pretty strong other things, effective teamwork. Anyways, I just think that when you focus on something, it seems to bring it forward. I also don't know what this looks like when you teach it. And that starts getting into questions around 261, whether we're actually, however that's taught could be violation of that particular area, if not done in a responsible way. So that would be my argument there. Should I do both motions at the same time? Sarah? I'm asking you because you probably won't vote for them. That's why I'm like, do I just do both at the same time? Okay, the other one would be strand 22, and I don't know the standard, I can't. Standard 1, and this is outline opportunities to promote qualified people in the workplace. So we'd cross out diversity and actually the opportunity to promote. The problem is that even in ProStart 2, it says you have to talk about employment practices, like you can't be discriminatory in your practices on your employment. But then here we're saying outline opportunities to promote diversity in the workplace. I'm not sure what that is, but it would seem like you would outline opportunities to promote qualified people within your workplace. And it doesn't matter single, married, age 50, age, 20. I'm not sure even what diversity means here. I don't know if it means how many kids you have or not, hair color, race, ethnicity, right? Any of that. Is that what it means that we're promoting? And if we are, what does that mean to promote that? Do you take a measurement of the diversity you have in your, and if so, what is the measurement tool that you're taking, right? Is it race? And then you have to promote whatever the percent, and I don't even know how you get into that because now you're into discriminatory practices. So unless I just don't, maybe I don't fully understand what the purpose of this is, but it seems to counteract what's taught in ProStart 2, which is you can't be discriminatory in your hiring or your employment practices. So those are my thoughts and my argument there. Okay, so then I guess there's a third motion, which we can leave it in. It's kind of funny. Sorry. Let me just read it out, and if we can leave it in, it's probably not worth taking it nationally and asking them to change it, but it's personal attributes so soft skills, personal attributes that enable someone to interact effectively and harmoniously with other people. That's really nice. And harmoniously. I don't even know it. That's happy. Maybe we're harmonious today. I'm not sure, but it just would seem to interact effectively. I'm not sure what harmoniously is, or even if harmonious is what we want in the workplace. Sometimes you have to be, it's not always a harmonious environment. If you're questioning something or a practice of, within a workplace, and in this case, ProStart, right, cooking, maybe you're having, someone's not safe in their practices. They're leaving the knives out some way, or they're not cleaning their boards or something. That doesn't, effective practices are, we've got to clean this, and it may not lead to harmonious, engagement. So, but I don't know if it's worth a national battle or harmonious. So, yeah. So those would be the three I would make, is strike that, but we can leave it in.
If I can make an argument towards harmonious, I actually just heard of a situation in a kitchen where, one of the main rules, don't leave the handle over that. And especially when your kitchen is full of, how many students at this point? 8 or 9 students. That becomes a problem. But in order to accommodate some situations here, it's not being addressed. So in order to keep harmony, they are actually allowing a violation to continue to occur. And that's just one of multiple situations in a kitchen. Now, if you have boiling water, grease, oil, that handle in order to keep things harmonious is actually, it's just a disaster waiting to happen. So the argument it's coming from that. Like, there's all the 10 to 1. Let's kind of whittle down the 10 and let's bring it back to, we want to teach kids, you don't want burns and you don't want to burn anybody else. So let's have a little bit of conflict, hold the line and say that you cannot do that in the kitchen, resolve the situation. We're being effective with other people.
I am happy to bring this to our Utah Restaurant Association. I know the director there sits on the board, so she'll be happy to take these arguments to the board. Thank you.
Probably need to be part of the motion is that these three amendments, and I can make an official motion, and that they be taken to, what, do I need to list off a specific name? Just the Utah Restaurant Association. Okay, so the motion would be in ProStart 1, Strand 3, Standard 1, to strike, explain how stereotypes and prejudices can negatively affect working together. And then ProStart 1, Strand 2, 22, Standard 1, to strike diversity and add qualified people. And then in ProStart 1, workplace skills, under soft skills, to strike and harmoniously.
So what
And did I say, and then take it to, did I already say that? And take it to the digital, no, sorry, take it to who again? I wrote down digital mark. Take it to the Utah Restaurant Association to request that they may make amendments nationally.
So may I clarify
Yes.
just really quickly? So in your motion, you said to strike. Is your intent that we remove the language from our standards, or to take the recommendations to URA?
Michelle, what can we do?
Since they're national standards, you want to stay in,
Can
have
we,
the kids be able to get the certifications nationally that they are going for. So you'd want your motion to be to take it to the Utah Restaurant Association. So direct staff to take it to the Utah Restaurant Association.
okay,
Good.
right?
That would be my suggestion.
Right. I'm just trying to think through that. If we modified it, then there's the risk that they don't get the
Correct.
certification, but maybe not. Maybe? I'm
think
asking the
you're-
question.
I-
Presumptuous to change something that we are not charged until we get, we ask them to change it because of these reasons. which
Well,
I-
let's at least get the feedback, right? And then from there, we can decide if it's of importance enough that we're gonna, and my concern is on a couple of these, the diversity part might actually, depending on how it's taught, cross over some Utah lines, depending on how it's taught, and the same with the prejudice and
So
others.
Lola can do with her teachers that teach ProStart, she can do some professional learning and help them understand what that standard means and how to appropriately follow board rule and state law.
Okay, so I would recommend that I said that right, to take it to the Utah. Okay, so I think that's it then.
Okay, we have the motion. We have the motion before us. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. We have 3 ayes and 1 no. Thank you very much. The no being Board Member Rio.
Okay, I have one more motion today, and then the others, I would really, and I can make a motion that we either another meeting this month or even next month. I don't know what the quick turnaround needs to be on these, so I guess we can leave it. Well, let me make this motion and then,
Do we need to approve that one or send
Yeah,
it
we
on to
do.
the board, the ProStart?
someone else want to do that?
You're so good at it.
No,
You were.
I just want the changes before I approve it, but I will move it to the board, but I'm not gonna make the motion, so. Not that, I'm just,
All right.
if you want to make the motion,
I'll make a motion to move.
that the committee approves.
That the committee approves ProStart, was it 1 and 2? Just one.
one.
ProStart 1 and move it to the full board
For final
for
approval.
final approval.
Thank you for that motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We have a no from Board Member Green. Thank you.
Okay, and then this is FAC, is that how you say that, fax? Okay, do you say FCS? Okay.
Yes, I say FCS.
Okay, I didn't know if you were sometimes.
say
FCS, Family Consumer Science.
but facts. Okay.
Same thing.
My mom's a facts teacher, so it's.
That's why I've heard fax. That's why I was like, how do we refer to this? So this is in Strand 4, Standard something. I can't read those.
1.
Standard 1. And it's just, it's not broken out correctly. I mean,
I have
it
it here.
is. You have it? Okay. So just so the public is aware, it's exploring effective personal skills, but it's identifying steps of decision making So identify is the first one, brainstorm, compare and contrast, and then talk to a trusted individual. This is 6th grade. I just feel like this is an opportune time to still have a good relationship with your family and your parents. An individual, I would just I would strike that and put family member. So
I was thinking about this when I looked through the whole piece, and I don't agree. I hear what you're saying because it is 6th grade, but I don't agree only because if I'm making a decision about something and you're teaching these 6th graders about how they go through this process of, I want to make a decision to decide if I should play softball or not, or soccer or something, right? And if I had to make that decision in 6th grade, the last person I would talk to are my parents or my family because they don't understand. They didn't understand, right? And so I would maybe talk to a coach. I'd maybe talk to another teammate. I would talk to a friend that maybe has made the same decision. So I think individual, and I think the key part there is trusted, but I think individual, leaving it more broad is more beneficial to this idea of decision making, that the concept of decision making they're trying to teach students in 6th grade. And I only say that because my mom is the least athletic human being on earth. So are you okay with that?
So our suggestion would be, what if we combined the two and said, talk to a family member or trusted individual? And the reason that I would suggest having both is because even in 6th grade, there are children who can't or don't trust a family member because of situations at home. And so I would want them to know that there are still people out there that they can trust and talk to. First and foremost, family, but there are options.
I would be fine with that. Talk to a trusted individual or family member.
Other way around.
That works. See? That's how we work together. We meet in the middle.
Yes.
And
Okay,
and I'm
okay.
going to argue because I that is the case, but with some kids, but I think you always err on the side of what is it we want, right? And I think you would want children to go to their families, right? And to continue to build that relationship. That is key and important, but that doesn't mean that's the only place they could go get, right? You're right. If it is, trying to decide whether to try out for a team, it may be a friend that is that person that helps to, give that. But I think we always err on the side of what's going to build and strengthen children the most, and then, allow for some flexibility there.
But I like the fact that we are providing them some options for the children that don't have that option.
Yeah.
So that they're not feeling like, okay, well, I can't talk to my family, so I guess I'll just go eat worms or whatever. So I love both in there. Okay, the motion is then to not go eat worms, but to go to a family member or trusted individual. Any further discussion? Those in favor say aye. Aye. Did I hear an aye down on the end?
Yes.
Okay, great. That's unanimous. Thank you.
You're not sure?
I haven't voted yet.
Oh, you haven't?
Yes.
Okay. We'll wait. A no from Board Member Green. Okay. Now, where are we?
I'll move that class forward. I think that was the only one in there. Oh, is it? Yeah, the facts exploration is a different course, right? So facts, 6th grade, strand 4, standard 1, to amend it to read.
We voted on that. We did
Oh.
that.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Right.
So move
Okay,
that to the
sorry.
board.
Let's keep me on track here. Did the committee approve facts 6th grade for approval by take to the full board, and I'm messing this up, and approval?
All right, thank you. We're going to take
Right.
this to the full board. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
That's unanimous. Thank you.
Okay, I'm just kind of throwing out there so you know where I'm headed with this. So on facts exploration, elementary keyboarding, what was the other one? The apprenticeship, and then K-12 teaching as a profession capstone. I would just make a motion that these be moved to either the next meeting. I'll just put next meeting, whether that's this month or in December.
May I suggest we add data analytics to that list?
Oh, yeah,
So that
sorry.
we can hurry and make some changes and bring it back
Yeah.
and you can.
And data
include it.
analytics. Is that the full name?
Yep.
Did you add apprenticeship?
Yes, because we pulled it off and I just had some questions around that, but I don't, yeah. Yes. Okay, well, that's the motion and then I can share some, do you want me to share information before we vote?
That would be great.
Okay. Sorry, let me get down to where it is. Okay, so when it comes to the keyboarding, I just really have a concern when we start this and we're using time in our younger grades. And I just want the research that says this is when we're supposed to be doing this. This is when it's effective. Instead of just saying, well, we should just start. Kids should be driving too when they're 16, but we don't start teaching kids pieces of driving in kindergarten, right? So when is, I understand in third grade, they have to take the assessment and it's typed, it's on a computer. So I'm really concerned that we're spending a lot of time on something that could be spent later and still get the same result, that is maybe taking away from those key critical things that we should be doing in preschool, kindergarten, first, second grade. So I'm just telling you where my argument's going to be coming from. I want to know the research. I've been doing some of the research myself. So that's on keyboarding. On facts exploration, the strand 5 to me is a disaster. Do I dare say that out loud? And the reason why is because it's when you look at all of our other strands, it's like we have these pieces and points that we want to hit, but it's like this big spelled out self-esteem, this and that. And the research around self-esteem, self-consciousness is really not real sound, meaning that there's questions on, I mean, self-esteem was a big movement through the 80s and 90s, and we took it out for a reason, because you can have real high self-esteem and be really not a good person. So, and there's other issues with it too. It becomes very self-centered instead of, you know what I mean, on service oriented and things that we're not down to those, I guess, foundational pieces again, right? That help sustain. So, but I'm gathering research on that and trying to understand what we need to do there and what we don't. And you'll have to remind me the title of it. That course or that strand.
The strand reads, strand 5, students will exercise the social and emotional skills related to human services.
So it's the human services component. What do they need to know for human services? This is a broad overview, right? So go to and this is what I haven't had time to do, going to the human services courses that are going to be taught and saying, what are the foundational pieces of those courses that need to be incorporated? When I read through that, I was like, is this foundational for those courses? To me, it didn't seem like it was. It was about building self-esteem and maybe that's foundational. I just don't think so. So that's there. And then the last one, then anyone can respond here. And then the teaching as a profession, it does not align. The first two strands align with our standards. The second two strands are teach them basic math and basic writing. And if we're talking a high school 11th grader and 12th grader, and they don't know the basics of adding and subtracting and division and multiplication, this is not the course for them. We've got to get them in a basic math course.
So this is about aligning in this particular case, this is about aligning to the paraprofessional certification so that students who finish this capstone course are prepared to certify as paraprofessionals. And that's a direct tie to what is covered on that exam.
Okay.
So it's how do you teach those concepts?
But those aren't the two strands. That we have 4 strands in our paraprofessional. The thing that we passed 2 years ago, I went and looked at ours and it aligns pretty close to the first two, but the last two, it seems to not be those strands. And I guess if you're saying that the assessment they have to take to be a professional has to have those pieces, now that's a different, right? That's maybe a different argument there. But when I tried to compare them, they didn't align. So then I was like, I don't know what we're doing. So yeah, hi.
Hi, Ashley Higgs, CTE Education Specialist. So the format of this course, how the subject matter experts designed it, was for the first two strands to identify what the purposes of a paraeducator in the class, and then what teaching strategies they would need to be a high quality paraeducator, as well as what would go on to become what instructional strategies would make them a good teacher. And then strands 3, 4, and 5 are aligned to the para-pro assessment for their first credential that they could be given as a high school student, because they can't walk out with a teaching license. And so the first two strands do align to the paraeducator, and then the 3, 4, and 5 align to the objectives that they would need to pass that para. And what we tried to do, pardon?
The assessment.
The assessment. And so what we tried to do with those contents is, if you look at the performance objectives, they're doing activities as a para to teach that, so they understand how to take the exam and those sort of things.
When you say the exam, what is the exam?
So the Para-Pro assessment, it is an industry certification that students can
National?
take. Yes. So,
And are we passing at a high rate?
This is the first capstone. It's we don't have it.
So, but the paras around the state, are they passing? Does that make sense? Maybe you don't know.
I don't know that question. So.
Okay. And I guess the concern, I guess this is the alarming part to me, is I'm looking at the math that they're asking them to do, going, we're reteaching this and kids don't know this. This is not this is just basic math. This is not, solve for algebra. This isn't any of that. So then I'm in a little alarm going, you mean they can't pass this? They had to take this class in order to.
No, that's not the idea.
Okay,
The idea
okay.
is to understand the standards on the industry certification.
Okay.
So that they can pass that certification. So then this would be a stepping stone for students to be college and career ready. And it allows them to have a higher pay entry level job as a para while they're working on doing a teaching license or whatever.
Okay.
Malia, I'd love to hear your input.
Hi, good morning. Malia Hyde, Executive Coordinator of Educator Licensing. To answer Member Earl's question, in the state of Utah, for a paraeducator to work in one of our restricted areas like special education, Title I or Title III, they need to have a certification, which can be passing the praxis is one way to earn that certification. The other 3 pathways are, we have 2 additional paraeducator assessments that are available. One is out of Kansas, one is out of Colorado. But those 2 tests do not yield a national certification. The praxis is the one that is the national standard. And then the other is to have an earned associate degree.
Thank you.
I still, if we can do that in the next one, I just, with all the information I just gathered, I need to go kind of weigh it out again. So
my caution is that we certainly do want to look at the research, but I can find research on anything that you want me to find research on, especially with AI, to help me out. I want to make sure that the research that we find is in alignment with what we want to accomplish in the state of Utah and with our schools, and what just the overarching, I don't want to just grab some research, say on keyboarding or on teaching grammar or teaching fundamentals that pushes something when there is an equal amount or maybe even a larger amount of research coming from the opposite direction. I want to make sure that our research approach is balanced and that we're considering both sides and that we're listening so that we arrive at, and we're particularly consulting those who are having to implement these standards and having to spend hours upon hours and weeks and months and years in the classroom, that we're getting their input uh, rather than just saying this is what the research says, so we got to do this. And it may be in opposition to what's being recommended by our experts in the field or those that are actually teaching. And I'm not questioning the opportunity and our responsibility to question and to ask the questions and to do the research. But I just want to make sure that we don't get stuck with research, because research is available on both sides, and we've got to equally balance that.
I respect that, but I do think that if there is research that does say, children's the distance, right, to even do typing in kindergarten is not really, and I know they've kept it very simple, but the amount of time we could spend doing other things like helping with reading and then devote additional time somewhere else. And I understand what you're saying. You're right. We could find research on a lot of stuff, but it does need to be, right, best practice. And I think that's what you're saying. And that making sure we could be off on some of our practices. We need to be double checking ourselves at all times.
Absolutely.
And if I could access research, no, just kidding. I've been reaching out to Patty going, how do I, because I can find research, but I want to see how it, right? I want to see how large the size is. I want to see what the effect size is, but I can't, some of the research is tricky to access without having a accessibility. And we're working on that so board members can have that accessibility too.
About keyboarding, who oversees that? Hi, that works out. Okay, great. So if I could share just an experience about this subject. So we had thank you. We had some of our end of level tests that came back. And by we, I mean just a specific school. And the discussion was that I can't remember if it was third grade or fourth grade. They didn't get enough quantity in that part of the assessment for them to know what I guess I'll go with third graders. I think it was third graders that were supposed to type. Anyway, but they didn't perform at the level that they were hoping for. So what happened, it spurred a discussion / debate on, well, it's because these third graders don't know how to type proficient enough to answer these questions and to, do the type of job they were looking for on the test. So then the discussion went to, well, we need to introduce typing at a younger age, and that they would start teaching typing in the second and first grade. But there's that disconnect that first and second graders are still learning how to hold a pencil correctly and all the intangibles that come with that whole setting. And so now when this practice manifests into a student's learning experience, which it did, we're going to fast forward now to like 3 years later, and you have students that have been now pushed to be typing on a computer for that assessment, which then denied them the ability to actually you can read their writing. So time's been taken away from writing. They're not developmentally doing really well on the computer still, because they're still learning how to spell. They're still learning how to type. So then that will start to manifest that they can't do either or. They can't write and then they can't type. So then we're going to use technology and say, well, now they're on an IEP, and what they've been given in the IEP is that they can talk to the computer. So we're basically making a percentage of students that are functionally illiterate in every single way. The only thing that they have is their voice now. And so I want to know what grade typing is introduced. That might be hard because my kindergartner was placed on, a computer the first thing of the day. So does that count as learning how to type, like, first and second grade, they're on the computer all the time. Does that count? So do we have a specific grade level where an actual typing class happens? So I'd like to know that. The other thing is are they being watched? I mean, we used to have typing classes. I remember mine, and they made custom built cardboard boxes with 2 little holes. You'd stick your hand right, and you would have the screen and muscle memory, and that was your assessment. And then if you passed, you could play Oregon Trail, and it was the coolest thing ever. We had like a generation of kids that learned to typing because they wanted to play Oregon Trail. So I'm like, okay, do we actually have an assessment where hands are covered and a formal class? And I remember when that specific classroom was extracted out of the elementary, because then we went to Chromebooks. But I also would argue that I saw somewhat of a decline in the quality of typing instruction, because for a half an hour, 3 times a week, kids would go into a classroom and a teacher would monitor and walk the space and have that instant feedback on kids when they need to know how to type. And so my second question would be, could we get, and this can be for our next meeting, could we get an understanding of what that engagement looks like currently? And how is that aligned in the state of Utah? Like, what are the best practices? Can it be formal? Is it still formal? Are we really pushing typing? When do we actually start to track how a student is learning how to type? If the computer is being introduced too early, is that going to make it so they're not learning right out of the gate? They have to go undo bad muscle memory habits, because typing is muscle memory. Anyway, I will.
Ashley can answer some of those questions for you right now. However, I'd like to interject with a shout out to the generation who learned to type on a typewriter. All right, Ashley, take it.
So, to answer your first question, when do they actually physically start composing? Based off of the standards, it should be starting in 3rd grade, where they're starting to, what's the language I use? Sorry, I wrote it down on another piece of paper. But how the committee wanted to do it is that we're just giving them the language, like no home row, no K through 2. Research shows don't do it that early because they don't have the hand-eye coordination. They're still learning to write with a pencil. They're still learning letters. They're still learning all of those things. So in the standards, we're not having them compose at anything. Starting in 3rd grade is when we start doing it because of the exams that they do, the end of year testing. And so we have them demonstrate in 3rd grade. There we go. 4th grade, they start to develop. And then 5th grade, we want them to start to master, because that's when they'll do the end of year proficiency report. In the keyboarding, what did I say?
Keyboarding proficiency.
Okay. In the past, the focus was on speed. And that is where your bad habits started to come, because 5th grade teachers or whoever they had in their school assessing these were like, "Okay, we gotta type 20 words a minute. We gotta type 25. Feedback from middle school and high school was, we're still having these kids come and they can't type and things like that. And so the focus, and even in the board rule, is that we want them to key by touch, which is the muscle memory. We don't, because once they're on devices more, that's where speed comes. And so we really want the emphasis in the elementary to be proper technique. And that's why you see there's no words per minute, there's no errors. We really want it to be focused on, when you're on a device, you're having proper technique, you're using correct fingers, those sort of things. And so in the standards for grade 5, we have it outlined as what a 4, 3, 2, 1 is, based off of a 4 is, can they type correctly using proper technique? Number 3 is they can type, but their technique might be bad. They slouch in their chair or whatever. Number 2 is that they have to occasionally look. And number 1 is they're dependent on looking at their fingers. And so that way, anyone that walks into a classroom can identify if, I would hope, Randy Booth, because of your wife, you can type with proper technique. And so he's a 4. And Emily, sometimes you just have to look. So you're a 2. And Jeannie or board member Earl, like, yeah, you're really dependent on looking at your fingers. I'm sorry, And so it's not a, and so we wanted it to be able so that because each LEA is different in how they do this. They may do a pullout where a library aide is doing it. It may be a para, it may be a parent volunteer. And so we do have an elementary keyboarding methods workshop that we offer to LEAs that teachers can come and attend. Sometimes it's very well attended. Other times it's not because of who an LEA chooses to do it. It's not necessarily a licensed educator. So does that help
Sometimes
answer?
it's even whether an LEA chooses to do it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not consistent across.
Yeah. And yes,
many,
there is
many
board rules
that are not teaching keyboarding.
Although it is in board rule.
It is in board rule.
They are supposed
Mhm.
to.
Yeah.
By
So,
grade 5.
But the reason they can't in some districts, they don't know how to pay for it. They don't have the time to fit in the 3rd grade with all the other things that they're doing curricularly. And they just we haven't helped them figure out how to, this can be done. We really want it to be done. And here are some ways that you could adjust schedule or emphasis on literacy and numeracy and you get your 3-hour block of this and whatever this, and then you have 45 minutes once a week or once every 2 weeks, and PE doesn't exist at all. I mean, it's all of the other courses that have to and keyboarding is one of those other courses that has to be fit in with the huge blocks of numeracy and literacy. And so it's a challenge for Ashley to make that happen across the whole state, especially when LEAs have control over their finances, their time, their resources. And so we're just grateful if they get it done, however they get it done.
So Chair Booth, should we submit the questions on those courses that we're moving to another? Is that the best way to do that? Because I have a few other questions, but we might as well do that because we've got a few things left on our agenda. And then we'll just, Talia, do we just submit them to you and you can get them to wherever they need to go?
Yeah.
Okay.
Could I just ask for
yeah.
clarity on one more thing? Just give us a teaser on, because this wasn't in your original notes on apprenticeship. What?
A teaser.
Just a little teaser.
No, that wouldn't be fair. How about I send it to you? And the reason why is my brain's a little bit fried today. Just as going through all these, trying to keep things sorted. I don't know that I was just looking for my notes and I can't find where I've closed it out somewhere. So I can't remember the title. So can I tease you through an email?
Yeah, that's great.
Okay.
Send them to Andrea and Andrea can distribute.
Yeah. So that it's fair. So you're aware, right? You can say, okay, what do we need to focus on here to get the right information? So sorry, I wish I'd pulled that up and I tried to, but yeah.
Okay, so we will do those, submit our questions.
Do we need to make a motion?
We made a motion. Well, we
did vote on it,
ever
though.
made a motion for the ones that are going to be to next month.
She started.
Yeah, I thought I did. Yeah, let's do that then. So I move that, paths exploration, elementary keyboarding, the apprenticeship, and then the K-12 teaching as a profession capstone. Oh, and data analytics be moved to our next meeting. So that could either be December or if we have a time in between. So
in terms of timeline, is it better to have another meeting before December, or is December still okay in terms of getting the new standards out to everybody?
January would be the soonest they would.
We would be fine on apprenticeship. So I'm going to make an executive decision and say we'd be fine with December committee meeting. That would give us then, if we can get through them in December committee meeting, then we would go to full board in January and have everything approved the beginning of January. Brecken, beginning of January. Is that doable for you? Sure. We just have been working on the apprenticeship course for a very, very long time, and they're anxious to.
Well, I mean, it's up to Chair Booth or whatever and Vice Chair Green if we want to have another meeting. But you're just saying we may not.
In November, it's been.
Yeah, that's true. We are running into that with other things, aren't we?
I do have a couple of other things going on. But I think we could definitely get them finished in December so that they can move to the full board.
Yes.
Yeah. Sounds good.
So we've already moved forward. Can we just do all of, so for the full board meeting, the agenda would have all of the CT standards instead of like the ones. I think.
The December meeting.
December, we can, all the ones that you guys already approved, we can move those forward and vote on those in full board in December.
See, I would prefer if we just did them all in January. I can take that to leadership.
So one thing to consider is you will have a new board in January who has not been part of these discussions. So that whatever you prefer.
Okay.
And just so that.
We'll talk in executive planning meeting about where we place the ones that we've already moved forward to the board.
I think they fit well all together too. And so.
They do. All right. Thank you so much for your preparation and for sitting through a lot of discussion, and we appreciate the opportunity to have that discussion. All right. Our next agenda item. Okay. Kevin John, Technical Assistance Audit Report Review. Come on up. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Eager to just take it away and give us a brief update. Okay. If you'll just take it away and give us a brief background on what we're going to be considering here for the next few minutes.
Okay, wonderful. My name is Kevin John, Deputy Audit Executive for the State Board of Education. That is you that I represent. So I'm happy to be here and speak with you today about an audit that we completed a couple months ago, the Technical Assistance Audit. So let me start by saying this is new. In the 11 years I've served the board, we have never presented on an audit in a standing committee. We presented in board meetings and we presented to the audit committee, of course, but never to standing committee. So there is no standard on what this looks like. So I am an open book. We are prepared to do whatever you need us. I am prepared to do a slight presentation if you'd like, just on the technical assistance audit. So the public has some context in what we're talking about. And then happy to answer any questions you have. So, okay, I'll proceed that way. So in short, I believe it was in November of 2023, the board prioritized an audit of technical assistance. And by that, we mean assistance provided by the State Board of Education to recipients, primarily LEAs. So internal audit proceeded with that audit, roughly an audit a year ago, and then we started digging in. So one of the first things we looked at was, is there a legal requirement of USB to provide technical assistance? And the resounding answer to that is yes. We found hundreds of examples in law, both federal, state, and internal policies at USB that says, yes, we have a requirement to provide technical assistance. So we looked at that. We then sent out a survey to USB. Now, the response rate wasn't great. We got about 56% of employees who responded, but give us a place to start looking and saying, what does technical assistance at the State Board of Education look like? The report contains an entire chapter that kind of quantifies who and what and how technical assistance is being provided. Essentially, the vast majority of staff at USB is providing support to LEAs or to USB or other entities regarding criteria, best practice, things of that nature. So we kind of quantified that there within the report to just give the reader some context of what technical assistance looks like at the State Board of Education. The second part of the audit essentially dives into, and what is the quality of the technical assistance, right? Is it reliable? Is it accurate? Is it timely? Is it helpful? To do that, we kind of took two approaches. One, we surveyed LEA respondents. So we sent a survey out to LEAs and just said, hey, we want feedback from you. How do you feel about the technical assistance that you're receiving? The second part we did is we looked at specific examples of technical assistance and just said, are there any ways it could improve? And so in those two parts, we identified a few things. And I'm going to turn to my screen a little bit because
sharing, and then if you'll share there, then they will see it on the Zoom.
I have nothing to share. Yeah, so it's just the report. Yeah, I don't have like an actual presentation. So in short, when you look at that report, and so the report is up and you can scroll through it and any reader can, but there are some highlights that I touch on. And that is when we reached out to LEAs, what we found out is about 10% of response in that survey said that the advice, the technical assistance being provided by the USB is not helpful. It is not accurate, is not reliable, it's not timely, right? So 10%. So we're doing a lot of things well, obviously, because 90%, the perception was 90% of it is. But of course, there's some room for some improvement. One of the areas that I think was more alarming was 40% of LEA respondents said that technical assistance provided online is inaccessible. They can't find it. Our website's hard to navigate. Now, we were in transition on our website, right? And so the website has changed slightly since that time. So hopefully that number's improved. But at the time of the audit, that was an area that they expressed some frustration in. And then another area where what we thought was interesting is if you're familiar with the Net Promoter Score, where you ask people if they're a promoter, passive, or a detractor, only 32% of LEA respondents were proponents of technical assistance from USB. So the vast majority, 68%, were either passive or detractors. Since that time, I've actually spoken to LEAs who say, yeah, we don't go to USB for advice. We try not to, at least. So we found that interesting as well. Now, obviously, we're doing a lot of things right. Let's not, we'll keep our eye on that, but there is some room for some improvement. We then turned our attention again to specific examples of technical assistance. And we looked at things like trainings that are being provided, material on our website. If USB employees identified that they provide technical assistance via emails, we pulled emails and we looked at emails to say what's contained in those emails. And then we analyzed them for what we would consider best practices. If it's a requirement of law, are you citing the law? If there's an effective date, are you providing that effective date? Things of that nature that we feel like would be helpful in providing technical assistance. Not required, right? We're not talking like a compliance finding or compliance audit. This is performance in nature. We're just looking for best practices. And when we looked at that, we felt like the problems actually outweighed the respondents. So there was more problems in actually looking at the technical assistance than you would, I guess, decipher based on the response from the LEA respondents. So a couple things we noticed that were problematic. Again, lacking citations to criteria. So we'd read things like emails that say, yeah, you have to do this, but then there was no pointing to the criteria. Where that becomes problematic is when we dug in deeper, we realized in a lot of cases it was unclear or incorrect. And so it's like helping by doing it. So for example, emails, 54% of the emails would cite that it was required but not provide or cite the source. Training material, 43% wouldn't cite the source. Website, 47% of what we looked at would not cite the source. And so it's like there's an opportunity for improvement there. It also then it almost validates or helps reconcile what the statement you're saying. If you're saying, yeah, this is required, and then you can provide the citation, it ensures that you're all on the same page, that you're communicating clearly. And it's like, this is the piece specifically that I'm saying that's required in case there's miscommunication. So effective dates, when we looked at training materials, 53% didn't have effective dates. We saw stuff on our website that had unknown authors. So 32% of our website material we don't know who actually created the information. And so if you're someone who has questions related to that document, who do you reach out to? So when we talked to LEA respondents, that was one of the questions they had. They didn't know in a lot of cases, like, who do I reach out to in the event I have additional questions? So there was room for some improvement. And then let's see, it says in looking at TA required by law, we looked at 7 examples and 43% did not meet all the requirements. So there was TA that was required by law. We pointed out, I mentioned at the beginning of this that we are required by law to provide technical assistance. We looked at 7 examples of required TA, and 43% of those, we didn't meet those legal requirements. So that would be more of a compliance finding. So ultimately, why does it matter? Well, if you've ever received bad information, you know exactly why this matters. But what comes to my mind is the TV show, The Amazing Race. I think BYU TV has an edition of it called like Relative Race or something like that. But in that TV show, right, you have these contestants who are paired up and they're running around and they're trying to reach a destination, and they have challenges and they're trying to navigate unknown sites. And in many cases, they stop and they ask for directions or they ask for help. And in that show, you see all the time when they get good advice, they win. And when they get bad advice or bad information, they often lose. Right. And you see people go from first place to last place because of some bad direction or some bad advice. And so the audit just points out that, like, we have an opportunity here to help people win by giving them good information, and we have an opportunity, or there's the potential where we can become a bit barrier and give them bad information. We want to be the former, not the latter. We want to make sure that we're helping LEA succeed by getting them to the right destinations, to helping them overcome their challenges through good information. The audit goes on to try to identify reasons why we may be in the situation we're in, and that's design shortfalls, or we lack understandings of role or responsibilities. Sometimes we're answering questions we shouldn't be. It's not our role, it's not our responsibility. In a lot of cases, that's because there's pressure to answer that question, and it's like, if we don't understand our role and responsibility, then we may succumb to that pressure, and we may answer a question that we're ill prepared to answer, right? Another thing that we arrived at is maybe a lack of policy and procedure. We found some very technical assistance specific types of policy and procedures that would help on one thing. For example, how to respond to the legislature or whatever. But generic, like overarching policies, there is really nothing there in that space. So there is some room there. So ultimately in the report, we come up with 3 recommendations. And in these performance reports, what's interesting about recommendations is they are really suggestions. There's not a legal requirement to do a lot of these things. So it's like, take it or leave it, just consider it. And so you'll see a lot of cases in our recommendations, we use words like consider this. Consider this. This is something you consider. One thing we said you could consider, and if Andrea, if you want to slide all the way to the bottom of the report, or not quite to the bottom, you'll see the recommendations. So right above that, right above that, you should see those recommendations. And yeah, you can keep going. You'll see I think it's right down there. I'll let you kind of navigate that. You might be a little high, but regardless, there's 3 recommendations. And one's perform a risk assessment. See how risky this really is. Is this, would there be value in creating policies and procedures to support USB staff? And by that, we mean a policy that might be as simple as saying, hey, if you're going to say there's a requirement of law, cite the source. Like, where does that requirement come from? Don't just say, yeah, you have to do this, but you have to do this pursuant to 53E, whatever, right? And so people know and they can verify that. Consider implementing a policy to ensure information posted on the website is reviewed regularly. One of the things I think we put in the report was, it's like board rules. You guys go through them every 5 years to make sure, are they updated? Are they accurate? Are they still reliable? Because within 5 years, a lot of things change. Right now, we're currently working on an audit on the CTE program, and we looked at a rule related to that just yesterday, and we found 5 significant problems in that, right? Well, you guys have a process that you'll catch that. We know who to send that to fix that. But in this same audit, we're identifying and continually identifying problems on our website of bad, outdated information that's posted on USP's website. Would it be advisable to create a policy that says, hey, each section, every year, every 2, every 3, go through the information on your website and make sure, is it still relevant? Is it still reliable? What's interesting is throughout this audit, we were switching websites, and one of those requirements in switching websites for the USB was go through your material, and before you just wholesale post it from the old website to the new website, make sure it's reliable, make sure it's relevant, make sure it's updated. And yet we looked at all this information on the new website, and there's a lot of it that isn't It's not. It still references things like 53A, right? And we all know that that crosswalk happened years and years ago. Documents that reference employees who haven't worked for us forever. And there are best practices, like don't necessarily reference a person, reference a position. So we just saw a change in the deputy superintendent of policy. But if you reference that position, not that person, even though Stallings is gone, we now have Nui who can fill in the position, right? So that's one of the other recommendations. And then the final recommendation was there is statute that allows the superintendent to clarify education law when there's something misunderstood or policy or practice or whatever. And we thought maybe consider establishing a threshold when the superintendent should exercise that. We understand it's kind of a gray area, but there is questions out in the field like, what does this mean for us and how do we do it? And do we wait for the legislature to clarify that? Does it need to wait for the board to clarify that? Or are there places where the superintendency, in their wisdom and their experience, can just clarify it and have the blessing of the board, right? In so doing, and they can just make those clarifications. Your superintendent is providing some clarification. We're just wondering whether or not there should be clarification on what that threshold is, so they feel more empowered to make those decisions. And that is my quick summary of a rather long audit report. And so I hope everyone has an opportunity to read it in its entirety, because I just touched on some of the highlights. But of course, there's a lot of data points in there that are just interesting to understand just the volume of technical assistance that your agency is providing and the great work that they are doing on many fronts. I mean, it's just endless, really. But there are, based on internal audit's objective and independent perspective, there is room for improvement. There's ways we can clarify so that our technical assistance is more reliable, more helpful, and more accurate. So happy to answer any questions.
So when we look at our interaction and our responsibility to provide technical assistance for our LEAs and our charters, there are a lot of have to realms. Let's say finance, for example. There is a lot of law, there's a lot of rule that requires their seeking our technical assistance in making, being compliant, making reports that are required. And there's a lot of stuff going back and forth. I don't know how much of that there is, say, in your area, Dr. Norman. How it's not as there are not as many required areas where our local education authorities would be required by law to seek technical assistance in some of the things that you would have be best positioned to provide that assistance in. And in the law and licensing, basically they're considering policy and considering requests from LEAs and then passing it back and forth. So they have a more immediate application for what we're talking about here. What about standards and assessment? What about student, all of the areas that you have supervision for? What do you think are the key areas where they're more inclined to connect with us? And where are some areas that we might want to focus in order to increase the connectivity and their desire to be provided with assistance in our realm?
Chair Booth, thank you for that question. Patty Norman, Deputy Superintendent of Student Achievement. I appreciate the question because there are some of the things that have been put in place as Kevin has talked about. For example, when we don't require LEAs aren't required to ask for technical assistance. We are required to provide technical assistance. And so I think that in looking at it that way, we also have a lot of LEAs that reach out to us. In fact, in the student support area, so we have student achievement, we have student learning and student support. In the student support area, we track all those requests. And it comes in, and then we have a committee that reviews all of those requests. And so we can chart and graph and tell you every request that comes in for any sort of technical assistance, any sort of request to provide professional learning, any of those things across the board. We also track what is coming in on requests for example, questions about standards revision, or those that are bringing, questions across the board, so that we know how to provide that assistance as well. If we're talking about how do we better support or want our LEAs to feel that safety, or being able to ask for that support across the board, or that transparency? We are looking at systems across the board when we come to audits, and what that looks like, and being able to track on a systems-wide basis. And that's some technology that's coming in as well. So we'll have a better tracking system to be able to do that. If our LEAs right now are talking about what they want maximum flexibility, minimum reporting requirements, and all of the money. So if we can make all of that happen, that is what is being requested out there. Yes. So they still want all of the support, all of the money, and then being able to minimize the requirements for reporting and minimize the other pieces. So an example of that is like in our discipline reporting and whatnot. We did have some things in the paper about, oh, did you know that this school, went up, or this, different reports that come out, and they don't want to be identified as failing in any way whatsoever. They would love to have all of the support to be able to, handle and work within those challenges and ranges. And so what we do with the information that comes in, and what we do with reporting requirements is sometimes scary for our LEAs, and we only do what is required. And so we don't step outside of that, and we do what's required from the legislature and from the whatever funds we accept. We meet the obligations of the reporting requirements that have been detailed out in the funds or in law in any way whatsoever, and don't go beyond that. So I hope that answers your question.
Is there anything we should be putting into place that would necessitate our functioning in a different way with our LEAs and with our charters? Are there concerns that we have in student achievement that if we were to adjust the system or adjust the requirements, it would make things better for kids?
That is such a loaded question. I'm trying to think of where to start. I'm thinking of all of the different programs, from child nutrition programs to licensing to counseling to assessment and accountability, teaching and learning. We're looking at all of the different programs that we have. Nursing, we have, all of there are requirements within every one of those programs, I think, that really protect students. I mean, we look at even individual things across the board about, data privacy requirements that really protect people. There's some things that if we were to take away would put students at risk. And sometimes when we provide that monitoring and support and technical assistance that's out there, it really is about protecting our students and our families and whatnot, even though it's uncomfortable to go in and actually have to enforce those requirements. And so I think that's really hard sometimes. So I would say that answer we could probably spend a couple of meetings on, and I can take back to our staff and say if there some things that are some low-hanging fruit, and get some feedback on that to bring back and say what are some of the things that are immediately that can be done.
Well, I think in response to the audit and the recommendations, the three major recommendations, I think we need, as a committee, to study those recommendations. And then I think, when you think of the time, the investment in time and energy and resources that have gone into that audit, there's no reason to spend that kind of resource and then not see some fruit, whether it's low hanging or at the top of the tree. We need to be reacting to the data that becomes available to us, the information that's provided through the intense efforts of some very devoted auditors. And so I would like us to devote some time to determining what are the, maybe start out with what are the small adjustments that we can make that will move us towards less burden, more efficiency in providing that assistance, and in making it possible for kids to benefit from the work that's already been done. So reactions or comments?
Yeah, I just think I just have two basic questions. Will this come before the full board, or does this just come back to does it come back to committee, or?
It's already come before the full board.
This is an information item.
Yeah.
And so it comes here and then it can be shared out in the full board as like, and we had an information item on, usually in the full board action items are discussed. It's up to Chair Booth to be able to say we had an information on and to pull something forward just as a reminder to folks, but it's usually not a full discussion item.
Okay. And then the second.
Can I add to that real
Oh,
quickly?
sure.
If I may. So we're at that corrective action phase. Like Member Earl mentioned, it's already gone to the full board. You published it, it's public. So we've moved to corrective action. And typically we work very closely with the superintendency. We follow up. They provide regular updates about 180 days to say, hey, we're moving this direction. I think, and I'm just going to assume at this point, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, the idea of bringing this to the committee is to make sure that the board as a whole fulfills its mission, which is to ensure that the agency is moving in the strategic direction you guys would like us to move. And so as we work together as a team, your internal audit department and your management, senior management, is that the direction you want? Or as decisions are made and progress is made, is that in alignment with what you'd like? Because ultimately our job is to follow up and report out. Their job is to make the tough calls of, do we follow this recommendation? Do we do an alternative recommendation? Do we just accept this risk or whatever? And so as they're making those judgment calls, it's looping you guys back in to say, do you agree with that judgment call, or that's a risk we're not willing to accept? And we want to mitigate that. And so this is something we'd like to do. So I think it's evaluating that. And that's a kind of assumption. Like I said, this is the first time we've ever done it. Now they're doing one right now in law and licensing that I was supposed to be up there doing as well. So Debbie's taking over. But so we've got two audits kind of going through there, and it might be a conversation for each of the committees to say, well, what does this look like moving forward? How can we support you as your senior management audit department to make sure that as we do invest time into audits and they invest time into corrective action, that it's being utilized or it's moving us forward as an agency in the direction that you would have us strategically move.
So have we identified corrective action based on those three recommendations from this specific technical assistance audit?
Yeah, I'm happy to answer that as well. So in every audit, there's an offer to provide a management response, and your superintendency is great to always provide superintendency or management response is what they're called. So it is included there. And so they have some, I can't remember exactly, but I think a couple of them, they had alternatives. One, I think they accepted the risk or whatever. And so they looked at it. And then we had some auditor concluding remarks, which means we just want to clarify some things to make sure we're on the same page, because maybe we're not. And so there are some auditor concluding remarks in those. They're not, that's not necessarily uncommon. It's not perfect. We'd rather leave the exit conference and make sure we're on the exact same page, but it's not necessarily a bad thing. It is good for you guys to see that there are maybe differing opinions on how to address this, and then you guys can take a look at that. So as far as corrective action, yes, they proposed timelines, personnel, who's going to be doing that moving forward, and what that looks like. It will be following up with that. And I think it is, again, behooves the committee to say, do we agree with those, or are those we disagree? And so you've kind of seen both sides, and ultimately it is a decision. It's a decision based on resources and priorities, and it's a policy decision. And so that's why those are written to the board. And so you guys can look at it from a policy perspective and say, yeah, we agree or we disagree, and we think this is a higher priority than maybe our senior management does. And that's just, it is a discussion. So it is out there.
If we see things that we have some feedback on, like even within like the recommendations, things that actually, were brought forward out of your discovery, that some of us had seen just on our end and feedback that we could do to improve, say specifically like the website interaction. Where do we take that? What's the best way to engage with providing, you may, for your, I don't know, you might consider this feedback from board members. I don't know. What do you think?
You can start, Alvin.
Okay, yeah, it only makes sense.
Yeah.
He's more important than me that she would finish it off. So, yeah, so at this point, corrective action is management's. Management is ultimately responsible for corrective action. Audit, again, we've made our recommendations. And then when everything's said and done, if we feel like it's still a risk, then our standards require us to report back to the audit committee and we say, we still think this is problematic. And we think this is a bigger risk than the agency should accept. But ultimately, it is management's decision, right? With the oversight of, well, according to the Green Book, the oversight body, which is you, in this case, the Board of Education. So my suggestion would be, and I'll defer to Deputy Norman if she thinks otherwise, but work with your management team in whatever venues they have available to just say, hey, I've read the report. I agree with this recommendation. I disagree, or I like your corrective action or whatever. And I think you can have communications there. Whether those are most appropriate from the full board or from individual board members or committees, I think that's up for discussion. But I think it is a conversation between the board and your superintendency at this point. And then we, again, have, as an independent and objective analysis team, have an opportunity to kind of look back and just say, we agree or disagree. But ultimately, a lot of these, when it comes to performance, are a policy decision. And so we support policy decisions.
Okay, thank you.
So yeah, and adding on to that, I was going to state that any of the things that you might see in there, then you can just work through Kelsey James, and she can put those things together, and then they can make decisions whether or not that's put on a leadership agenda, whether or not it's put on another committee meeting where there's a policy decision that you might want to make or whatnot moving forward, or if they're just ideas and suggestions. So if you funnel it through Kelsey, she'll be able to know the appropriate committee or the steps or an agenda or whatnot to forward those ideas.
Hi, these are my thoughts. So Sarah's been arguing with me over here in a very polite way. Yes. I mean, I think there's an information item, but the reason why it's here and the reason why other audits are there is because we are the oversight entity, and just an understanding of what is or isn't happening. And while the superintendency takes the risk, we are taking the risk too, reputational risk or other things. So, and I'm just using the website. Yes, it was new in January. Yes, there were a lot of hiccups. I don't know if everybody that responded to the survey was relating it to the changeover. Does that make sense? Or if it was systemic over the last 2 to 3 years, right? So it's hard to maybe parse that out and say, oh, it was only because we changed over, we sent the survey out. So therefore it was only January's feedback. And I don't know if that's the case or not. We knew we needed a new website. So I have my own concerns with some of this stuff on the website, just because I use it all the time, right? And I'm continually like, oh, that's a broken link, right? Or whatever. So there's still, and I understand we're still working through the bugs. So this is how do we improve, right? This is back to organizational excellence versus mediocrity, right? Just getting by because it's convenient. And I personally think this is an information item, but I don't think there's any reason why we couldn't request an action item next month or whatever. But the action item has to be relevant to what, right? It's not like we're coming in and telling what's going on, but maybe it's providing some additional feedback. Here's some of the things I thought of, because I've actually engaged with a couple of my districts this month, and I actually had some feedback on technical assistance. It wasn't something I solicited. It was something that was, after the meeting, by the way, sharing, this would be helpful. This would be beneficial. We have concerns with this, that kind of a thing. So it's been on my mind. I wondered if, and I don't know that we do this already, but it's just a thought. A lot of entities, businesses, when you engage with them immediately, like pest control, they came sprayed my house. Immediately, you haven't responded to our customer service feedback yet, right? I've had 3 texts from this organization. I'm like, yeah, you're fine. I don't have time to respond to how good you did, right? But I do think that there may be value in
some kind of immediate feedback based on the technical assistance that was get right, that kind of and I don't know how that's set up. I don't know how that would be functioned, but some kind of an immediate, how are we doing, right? Not that it's a for sure, but it might help to inform immediately, okay, maybe in this area, we have some greater needs, right? Or, I feel like we're really on base with, on this area, on another area. I mean, I send people to the state board. That's what I do all the time. When people call me, I had 2 emails this morning. I said, I give the phone number, which I look it up. Sarah's asking, where do you find if you need, but I look until I find the person that it relates to. And I said, your best person to go to, or if I don't know, I send it to Patty or someone who might know. Right. But the reason why I do that is because I'm sure that I'm having confidence that the feedback they're going to get is going to be the appropriate technical assistance. Right. So it is very much, we do this day and night and making sure that it's as solid as it can be. For me, it's really important. This is the face of what we do and how we engage with our LEAs. Let's see. I'm trying to read my writing. Yeah, those just kind of the overarching idea. And once again, I do know this was the agency that we're engaging with. And maybe it's next time we ask, where are you at on, where are we at on some of the, what did you implement? Where are we at? Just so that we're aware, so that we can see where the measurement tools are. And maybe that's actually I'm gonna make that motion. Okay. No, I'm gonna wait just a second. Go ahead.
What I was going to say is, and I apologize, I was just like,
yeah.
Hold on, because if you're going to say, where we're at with it, this does go to audit committee first. And so when it goes to audit committee first, the findings, the recommendations, and the response are reviewed before it came here. And so with that in mind, there's also a tracker that we have. And so that kind of shows where we're at, and it has all of the information. It has the information of the responses along the way, the 180 days. It was 60 days. I can't remember. It seemed like every other day, only because like in my area, that's not being mean. In my area, there's a lot of audits. And so there's a lot to track and whatnot. And so we've developed a more robust system, and that system is coming as well, that will be even more robust than our current tracking system of a spreadsheet. And so those things are coming. And so I wonder if you, within that consideration of whatever you're going to be making about updating, it might, where appropriate. So if it's in the audit committee, if it's a report to the full board, or access to any of those tracking systems, might be something for consideration.
I think part of the reason why we're having it in some committees is just so that there is some overview, there's some discussion. It's not like the audit got done and then no one really sees it for 2 years and then maybe corrective action have. And it does. I'm not suggesting it doesn't happen. That's not what I'm suggesting, but a lot of board members, if they're not in there, don't know, right? Or it's just not maybe at the front of their list because they're doing other things in their committee. So I think this is the intent is just for the awareness piece, right? Public can go back and listen. We can go back and listen. I can go listen to law and licensing where there's another audit in the right and listen to what they're thinking, and where the movements have been forward. I guess personally, I just want to know where we're at. How many days out are we now? Did you say from when this audit was released? When will be the next update?
I love your confidence that I would know that off the top of my head. But I want to say it's been released 3 months.
Yeah, that's
now.
why. So we're on what, 90 days, maybe?
Well, okay, and I should clarify. Release to the public is different than release because finalized, like we've been finalized, but as Deputy Norman mentioned, once it goes through and we have an exit conference with the client and they provide a response, then we consolidate it. We then goes to the full audit committee. They then send it to the full board. The board sent it here. So it was just sent here. So it was actually just released last month in the full board meeting. That's when it was released to the public.
That's when the 180 starts, or does the 180 start with the response from the?
So yeah, so the 180 starts when we put it in this tool that she's talking about, and we say, okay, it's been released, and so they can start going on. Your superintendency can start doing corrective action all along the audit. So if we find a problem, we try not to play this gotcha game. Hey, we're seeing this problem. we sit down and we do a monthly sync meeting where
Mhm.
myself and the superintendency and whomever else is working on the audit, we meet every month and just say, hey, here's where we're at. We've seen this. And so they can start getting a feel and flavor and start to think, well, maybe we should be working towards this or whatever. And so yeah, the actual 180 days, I think is when it's going to be released, and then we'll log it. So we're about half a year away from where we would do an update.
Okay.
But and in that system, we've used this system for a while in internal audit, and so we're kind of bringing the superintendency online, and it's more collaborative so that it can meet the needs specifically of those that were mentioned in House Bill 244 that were released from Office of Legislative Auditor General. And so it's not limited to just internal audit. So yeah, that process is ongoing. So yes, we'll see responses here, I would imagine. And it's not limited to 180. If they want to provide a response beforehand, we'd update it. And they actually can go in and update it whenever they want. And then we go in and we're prompted, okay, make sure we follow up on it.
So what do you see as the greatest value for us here? What, right?
Of this presentation right here?
Well, no, there's
Or
great
into-
value in your presentation.
Okay.
Kevin.
It's-
But I mean, is there any next steps that you see this group taking that would be of benefit? That's what I'm.
Yeah, I think that's it.
Because that's why I'm wondering about some feedback, but is the feedback appropriate, right? I mean, that's kind of an update where we're at or not, right? That's where I'm asking. Yeah.
One of the big values, just from my perspective sitting here, is that all this stuff is swirling around us all the time at all levels. And sometimes every once in a while, the swirling, you have to just stop and look at this and go, oh, wow. I didn't realize that was going on. When you said a minute ago, well, we have a lot of audits. And I have an area where I've got multiple calendars working, and I've got deadlines for this today and this dead for next week. And I'm just getting all of the responses inputted. Oh, sorry. Is there a way to simplify? And what would that do? And how do we harness and rein in all of this stuff that's swirling around us so that we are making appropriate policy decisions or making requests of the audit committee or of any part of the agency, and we're making those requests to move the stuff along and not further complicating the process when they're already to the point of overload beyond relief. So I'm just not quite certain. I mean, sometimes I feel like overloaded beyond relief just as a board member. There's just a lot of stuff to keep track of, and heck, I'm not keeping track of it all. And so what are the priorities? We can't do it all. So what are we going to do?
And I think that's kind of my question. What's the next step kind of thing?
Yeah. So if I may then, and I would be interested to hear Deputy Norman's thoughts on this as well. But my perspective, if I were in your shoes, I'll just take that angle. I would suggest, well, one, make sure you read the audit in its entirety, right? We provide executive summaries. Honestly, they're fine, but they're not adequate. Read the audit in its entirety, and then read the management response. And then if you agree with it, then I think you're in a pretty good position. And then the monthly follow-up that's happening in audit committee on audit findings. Now we're doing a 180-day cycle, but as Deputy Dorman pointed out, we have federal audits, we have Office of State Auditor audits, we have Office of the Legislative Auditor General audits, we have internal audits. So there's a lot of audits going on. And as we presented to the board in your study session a couple months ago, just about the last five years of audits, a lot of those audits remain in corrective action status for years and years, because as you pointed out, Chair Booth, there's a lot of snowflakes, using one of Scott's statements, right, flying around the snow globe. And so the superintendency is trying to address those individually. And there is a process in place to remind them of them, to assign an owner to assign a timeline, make sure. And so I think, again, from an oversight perspective, it's like, do you agree with management's approach? If you disagree, here's an opportunity to voice. And it doesn't need to be in this meeting, but you could become aware of it in this meeting, right? Or further aware of it. And then you could approach via one of those other venues and then say, hey, no, I think we should go this direction. And it could come before the full board or before a committee, and there could be a discussion of that nature. And just like, do you agree with the direction they're going? And if you do, then great. And then there's maybe, as you follow those agenda items, to say, well, I'd like to be kept abreast of this one. I want to make sure we do actually follow through on this. This one's of the utmost importance to me. And so you can follow through. Or if you do have suggestions like, no, I think we should be getting feedback, and that could be real time information that can help us. I will say in the report, that's one thing we did ask, and 70% of the people who are providing technical assistance are in one form or another asking for feedback. So there are some feedback loops that are incorporated in our technical assistance, which is why I started off by saying we're doing a lot of good things, right? It was 10% of LEAs who had problems, not 90%. Right. And so, but when we do look at that technical assistance, sometimes we don't know what we don't know. And so when you invest the time and the energy into an audit to go in and look and say some small things that we're probably not aware of, it's like when you say required, throw in a parenthetical and put the citation in there. And that'll solve a lot of problems potentially, right? One of the things we heard from LEAs is, well, sometimes we have to go back and back and back for clarification. It's like, well, what if you did provide the reference to code? Would you actually need to come back? Because now you know the code and you could dig into it a little bit deeper or whatever. So I think we're headed in the right direction. So I think from an oversight perspective, it's like, do you like the direction that your management is now selecting? If you agree with it, great, then follow up with it. If you disagree with it, then I think you have an opportunity to voice that. So as an auditor, I don't get worked up about audit findings. They're no big deal to me. I see them every day. I just think no one's perfect. So I love the way that member Earl couched this, and this is our desire for continued excellence, right? How can we get better? And that's what we should be looking at when it comes to an audit. Not, oh, we're not perfect. Well, of course we're not perfect. We're a huge agency trying to solve some very complex problems with very complex solutions. So are we doing a good job? Are there some things we can do better, or some of these things are acceptable? And it's like, not all technical assistance is going to be perfect. Can we live with that? I think maybe we have to live with that to a certain degree, right? But what degree is that? And so when we talk about internal controls, one of the things we're always talking about is establishing thresholds or tolerance levels. Well, what level is it? Is it 10%? Is it 5% or whatever? And just working with that. And I know that's where your superintendency is. In my conversations with them, they're always trying to say, where are the biggest issues? Where do we direct our limited resources to go help? And here they provided a response. And again, like I said, we have some concluding remarks where it's like, we just want to be clear that we're on, we may not understand these things the same. And I think from an oversight perspective, it's like, just read that, understand that. If you have questions, come to us. We're happy to clarify those. And then if you feel good about the direction they're proposing, then great. Know that there is a plan in place to follow up with that. That's our role. That's our responsibility. We follow up with them. They report out. It gets reported out to audit committee, and then from there it can go forward.
Great.
And may I add two things? I'm more than willing to afterwards share with you an audit, the tracker tool, to have you see some of those details that we follow and track. And then the second thing, I just wanted to follow up on one comment, just as a staff member, which is when audits sometimes last years than years, it's not because we're not doing anything, but sometimes it's because the legislature won't fund or won't make that change. So we've had audits come back to us that say, you need to make this change and request it of the legislature, which we do, and it's not passed. And so then we still have that audit finding, we don't get to, it's not done. And so there are several that are in there that are about the fact that we've tried and we've tried again and we've tried again, but it's not done yet. So I just wanted to say, we're not just sitting back going, oh yeah, just wanted to clarify.
Yeah, I will say the rules are a little different for internal audits versus external audits. Some external audit bodies have a say in whether or not they'll close an audit finding. but we're talking specifically about an internal audit. And so if we attempted, so we say, oh, work with the legislature to do this. And if our superintendency worked with the legislature or you guys worked with the legislature and it failed, we could close that internally. So when we say that there are some that are ongoing, well, as you point out, there are some that you can't resolve in 60 days or 180 days, right? We have a data problem in public education. Well, we've been pursuing USIMS for how long? So it's not that we're not actively working towards resolution on some. And that's why I think, to Deputy Norman's point, like seeing that tracker, seeing some of the input that's being collected, some of the updates, it'll give you a little bit of perspective on what we're doing. And again, then it comes down to priority or policy or whatever. But it is being informed, it's being aware, which I think this is a great venue for that. And then just, do you agree, because you've been elected to be strategic, the strategic direction for public education, do you agree with the direction that we're going in the USB? And if you don't, then I think it behooves you to stand up and be counted, right?
It's great. Well, thank you very much. We appreciate your report and taking the time to come and help us dig a little deeper than just a cursory reading of a report. I think the questions have been helpful, and your explanations have been more than helpful. Thank you so much. All right. Are there any other items that we should take a look at here? If not, I adjourn this meeting. Thank you.
And then I need to talk to my board.
Thank you.